Chapter 502 The Terrifying Lightning Tribulation. Tianjizi's speculation. As Chu Fan dealt with the purple figure, the very next second, the lightning in the sky once again erupted with terrifying pressure. At the same time, these bolts of lightning continuously formed one figure after another in the sky. Moreover, these figures exuded a terrifying aura. Standing at the very front was a black figure holding a long spear. The figure did not appear old. Instead, it exuded a vibrant, youthful energy. Of course, Chu Fan could not see his face at this moment. He could only infer his age from the aura emanating from him. While the auras emanating from the figures behind him were not as strong as this leading figure's, they still far surpassed those of ordinary cultivators in the Great Saint Realm. Seeing this scene, a surge of battle intent instantly appeared on Chu Fan's face, and then he, holding the Xianyuan sword, charged forward. Terrifying golden law directly transformed into a golden torrent, striking towards the figures ahead. Simultaneously, the golden law power filling the sky completely illuminated the already pitch-black lightning with a golden glow. Even a lightning tribulation in the sky could not obscure these golden lights at this moment. Evidently, the golden light had already covered the entire sky. At the same time, the Xianyuan sword in Chu Fan's hand also directly unleashed a terrifying sword light. Without any surprise, it directly struck towards the black figure holding a long spear in front of him. The black figure, seeing Chu Fan charging towards him, was somewhat enraged. The long spear in his hand instantly emitted streaks of dark light. These dark lights, like lightning, shot directly towards Chu Fan. The next second, the two collided. The moment of impact, terrifying pressure instantly generated across the entire sky. The Xianyuan sword in Chu Fan's hand, at this moment, emitted waves of terrifying imperial Dao pressure. He was like the sole heavenly emperor in this expanse of heaven and earth. However, at this moment, the figures behind the black figure were also continuously charging towards Chu Fan. Terrifying power, without the slightest hesitation, surged towards Chu Fan. Seeing this scene, Chu Fan naturally showed no hesitation. The Xianyuan sword in his hand, without any pause, struck towards the figures in front of him. The next second, Chu Fan engaged in a great battle with these lightning-formed figures in the sky. Terrifying power instantly swept across the entire sky. At the same time, a look of excitement appeared on Chu Fan's face. And as Chu Fan battled with the lightning-formed figures in the sky, terrifying power instantly spread throughout the entire sky. Even the entire eastern domain could now witness this continuously unfolding scene in the sky. At the same time, they also witnessed a scene they would never forget in their lives. That was the golden torrent in the sky constantly colliding with the lightning. And within this lightning, there were many figures they could barely discern, continuously clashing with the golden light. The moment the two terrifying forces collided, waves of terrifying aura also emanated from the sky. These auras seemed as if they would completely crush the entire firmament. At this moment, everyone below Chang'an City looked at the sky with a worried expression. Even the cultivators of the Great Xia Dynasty who had always believed their emperor could easily advance the Great Xia Dynasty to the Great Xia Empire now harbored a hint of worry in their hearts. After all, the lightning in the sky had persisted for such a long time, and their emperor had been within the lightning for just as long. Therefore, they were naturally worried about their emperor. At this moment, Heavenly Secret Master's eyes, imbued with a golden light, continuously gazed at the sky. In his golden pupils, he saw the scene in the sky. So, he frowned as he looked at the sky. How can this be? Merely advancing a dynasty to an empire would trigger such a lightning tribulation? Shouldn't such a lightning tribulation only appear when undergoing tribulation to the great emperor realm? Heavenly Secret Master looked at Chu Fan in the sky with a puzzled expression. He had not expected Chu Fan's undergoing tribulation to far exceed his imagination. According to Heavenly Secret Master's original thoughts, the lightning tribulation in the sky might be powerful, but it shouldn't be this powerful. After all, the figures appearing within the lightning tribulation in the sky were all once great emperor realm existences. One must know that such a situation only occurs when great emperor realm's strong experts undergo tribulation, but he had not expected it to appear now when Chu Fan was merely in the Great Saint Realm. Moreover, it appeared when the Great Xia Dynasty was advancing to the Great Xia Empire. Logically, such a situation should not have occurred. However, Heavenly Secret Master quickly realized that even the former Xianyuan human emperor only advanced his nation to an empire after he had already broken through to the peak quasi-emperor realm. But the Chu Fan before him had only reached the Great Sage Perfection realm and was already advancing his nation to an empire. So it was natural for the lightning tribulation Chu Fan faced to be stronger than that of the former Xianyuan human emperor. Furthermore, the followers of the former Xianyuan human emperor never surpassed Xianyuan human emperor in strength. After all, cultivators at that time did not yet know how far the possessor of the human emperor fate could grow. But now, Chu Fan has existences who have taken an alternative path to enlightenment by his side. Therefore, the terrifying nature of his lightning tribulation was understandable in Heavenly Secret Master's view. After all, there were several strong experts at the peak quasi-emperor realm within the Great Xia dynasty now, and it wouldn't be too difficult for them to successfully help Chu Fan overcome this lightning tribulation. However, Chu Fan did not intend to let them interfere with his lightning tribulation. After all, this was not merely his lightning tribulation. It was also the lightning tribulation of the entire Great Xia dynasty. This meant that if these strong experts at the peak quasi-emperor realm interfered, then this lightning tribulation would become even more terrifying. After all, the Heavenly Dao does not allow anyone to challenge it. And just as Heavenly Secret Master understood, Chu Wushuang and Chu Yanran, who were beside Heavenly Secret Master at this moment, looked at the astonishing phenomenon in the sky with a hint of worry. Although both of them understood that their imperial father's strength was exceptionally powerful. But at this moment, they couldn't help but worry for their imperial father. After all, such a situation now had only appeared once in their phenomena. Such a phenomenon had never appeared in their Great Xia dynasty before. Therefore, a hint of worry naturally showed in their eyes. Of course, besides Chu Wushuang and Chu Yanran, everyone from the Prince of Zhenbai's estate also slowly turned their gaze toward the sky at this moment. Chapter 503 The Imperial Cultivator's Prayer, the True Role of Luck. After all, in their eyes, such a scene was no less terrifying than the arrival of the end of the world. Therefore, Chu Long and Chu Tianxiong were looking up at the terrifying heavenly phenomenon in the sky with worry in their eyes. Of course, the army of the Great Xia dynasty was extremely confident in their own emperor at this time. Thus, the soldiers of the Great Xia dynasty showed no trace of worry on their faces. Instead, they looked at the terrifying phenomenon in the sky with fervent expressions. It was as if Chu Fan had already passed through this terrifying phenomenon in the sky. At this moment, the cultivators in Chang'an City looked up at the sky with a hint of worry in their eyes, although they had been extremely confident from the start that their emperor could overcome this crisis and successfully allow the Great Xia dynasty to advance into the Great Xia Empire. However, the current situation had far exceeded their imagination. It could even be said that the phenomenon in the sky now was far beyond what they could endure. Even the slightest pressure emanating from these terrifying heavenly phenomena in the sky was enough to suppress them all, making them afraid to look up. This instantly made the cultivators of Chang'an City understand just how terrifying the lightning tribulation in the sky truly was. Why is it so difficult for my Great Xia dynasty to advance into the Great Xia Empire? Does even heaven not wish for my Great Xia dynasty to advance into the Great Xia Empire? A cultivator looked up at the sky with disbelief and muttered, and after speaking, a hint of anger appeared on his face. Clearly, he had not expected the Great Xia dynasty's advancement to the Great Xia Empire to be this difficult. One must know that after the Great Xia dynasty was promoted to the Great Xia Empire, it would bring immense benefits to these cultivators. Therefore, the cultivators within the Great Xia dynasty naturally hoped that the Great Xia dynasty could advance into the Great Xia Empire. No matter how terrifying the lightning tribulation in the sky is, I believe the Emperor still has the strength to overcome this lightning tribulation. After all, the Emperor's strength has reached an unprecedented level. That's right, no matter what, the Emperor will be able to overcome this lightning tribulation and lead our Great Xia Empire to a higher level. Indeed, I still have to follow the Emperor to the central region, so how could this small lightning tribulation possibly hinder the Emperor's steps? The Emperor might be able to emerge from the lightning tribulation soon. After all, although the lightning tribulation is terrifying to us, it is merely child's play to the Emperor. The cultivators present had eyes filled with calmness and fervor. At the same time, many cultivators held great expectations for Chu Fan in their hearts. They all hoped that Chu Fan could easily pass this lightning tribulation, and then allow the Great Xia dynasty to directly advance into the Great Xia Empire, making it easier for them to successfully break through to a higher realm. At the same time, they would truly grow into peak experts. After all, the energy sources currently available within the Great Xia dynasty to support their growth were not abundant. It could even be said that the highest level they could currently reach within the Great Xia dynasty was merely the Saint King realm. Perhaps the Saint King realm was once considered the pinnacle existence in the entire eastern region. But now, the Saint King realm was nothing significant within the Great Xia dynasty. Therefore, they naturally hoped to increase their cultivation further. Moreover, the more their cultivation increased, the longer their lifespan would be. Thus, all these people hoped that their cultivation could be raised further. Just as everyone was looking up at the terrifying heavenly phenomenon in the sky with a hint of expectation, streaks of golden light continuously emanated from the crowd. These golden lights continuously gathered in the sky like specks of starlight. Then, these golden lights transformed into streaks of fireflies and directly entered the golden dragon of destiny before them. Originally, the aura of the golden dragon of destiny had begun to slowly diminish due to the erosion of time, but at this moment, the golden dragon of destiny began to gradually strengthen because of these golden lights. It was as if these golden specks of starlight from their bodies were the true source of the golden dragon of destiny. Seeing this scene, Heavenly Secret Master's eyes were filled with shock. At the same time, he finally understood why the human emperor could break through to the legendary Heavenly Emperor realm. Of course, there was no major realm distinction between the Heavenly Emperor realm and the Great Emperor realm, because to them, both were Great Emperor realm experts. However, one could crush Great Emperor realm experts, while the other was a Great Emperor realm expert. Naturally, although it was possible to crush Great Emperor realm experts, under the siege of numerous Great Emperor realm experts, their strength could not remain invincible forever. Otherwise, the Xianyuan human emperor could have directly leveled the entire Forbidden Zone in the past. After all, when a Xianyuan human emperor existed, the Forbidden Zone already existed in this world. However, although the Xianyuan human emperor was powerful at that time, he only managed to slay a few Supreme Being level experts. And at the same time, he struck down and repelled those Supreme Being level experts who wanted to initiate the dark turmoil. This is also why the relationship between Supreme Being level experts and the Xianyuan human emperor was so poor. After all, the Xianyuan human emperor was the only existence capable of suppressing Supreme Being level experts. After all, although those Great Emperor level experts had breakthrough to the Great Emperor realm in the past, they did not directly suppress the Supreme Being from the Forbidden Zone of the Supreme Being level like the Xianyuan human emperor did. Of course, while Great Emperor level experts existed, the entire Forbidden Zone naturally could not come out to plunder the vitality of the continent. After all, a Great Emperor level expert was a Great Emperor level expert no matter what, so they naturally would not allow these Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone to emerge. But throughout these millions of years, only the Xianyuan human emperor directly fought against the Supreme Being from the Forbidden Zone, and directly slew several Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone. This also led to the Xianyuan family and the Forbidden Zone having an extremely hostile relationship. The Xianyuan family even suffer massacres by the Forbidden Zone because of this. Just as everyone was constantly anticipating that Chu Fan could resolve this great battle, Chu Fan in the sky also felt the power within his body continuously rising. Streaks of golden radiance, like fireflies, continuously attached themselves to his body. Instantly, his body was filled with truly terrifying power. At the same time, the Xianyuan sword in his hand also emitted terrifying beams of light. These terrifying beams of light seemed as if they were about to completely cleave open the space before him. Streaks of terrifying sword light instantly slashed out from Chu Fan's hand. Chapter 504 Chu Fan breaks through to Quasi-Emperor, tribulation ends. Feeling the increasingly powerful chi within his body, Chu Fan revealed a look of ecstasy on his face. Immediately afterward, he was seen holding the Xianyuan sword and charging directly toward the lightning tribulation before him. The terrifying golden sword light directly sliced through the surrounding lightning. Then, figure after figure was directly slain by his sword. As these figures were continuously struck down by the Xianyuan sword in Chu Fan's hand, the terrifying shadow in the sky slowly began to dissipate. At the same time, a golden ray of light shone directly down from the sky. At this moment, the golden light seemed to dispel the darkness in the sky. It brought a semblance of dawn to the entire Chang'an city. It was as if the break of dawn was imminent. And at this time, as Chu Fan continuously charged toward the figures before him, the chi emanating from his body slowly began to increase. Furthermore, although these lightning tribulation figures were slain by Chu Fan, the ones that were struck down transformed into streams of pure power that entered Chu Fan's body. Instantly, the chi within Chu Fan's body continuously rose. In just a moment, the chi surrounding Chu Fan had already surpassed that of an ordinary expert in the Great Sage Perfection realm. One must know that Chu Fan had not spent much time since his breakthrough to the Great Sage Perfection realm. Moreover, he had successfully used his mission card to achieve the breakthrough in his cultivation to the Great Sage Perfection realm. However, his Great Sage Perfection realm actually began to change at this moment, continuously climbing toward the realm above great sage perfection. He was even close to touching the quasi-emperor realm at this time. Feeling the changes within his body, Chu Fan naturally wore a look of excitement. Immediately after, he looked as if he had transformed into a demon from hell, continuously slaughtering the lightning before him. The lightning couldn't help but tremble slightly when it sensed the killing intent emanating from Chu Fan. However, figure after figure formed by lightning quickly charged toward Chu Fan again. Seeing this scene, Chu Fan happily continued his slaughter against the lightning tribulation in the sky. A new round of battle quickly began. However, as Chu Fan grew stronger the longer he fought, the originally pitch-black sky began to welcome golden light. At the same time, the lightning tribulation in the sky slowly dissipated. Even the thunderclouds that covered the sky slowly vanished. Only a terrifying stretch of thundercloud remained in the very center. This thundercloud stretched for dozens of miles. It completely covered the sky above the entire altar. What the crowd did not know, however, was that Chu Fan was currently enjoying himself immensely within this thundercloud. Chu Fan was seen right in the center of this thundercloud. In the very center of this thundercloud was a pool of lightning resembling lake water. This lightning continued to flow within the thundercloud. As for Chu Fan, he had directly plunged his Xianyuan's sword into this thundercloud, and he himself entered this thundercloud directly without any resistance. The lightning within this thundercloud was continuously surging toward Chu Fan's body. As this lightning continuously surged into Chu Fan's body, the qi within Chu Fan's body slowly increased. In just a moment, the qi surrounding Chu Fan suddenly became terrifying. At this moment, he seemed to have stepped into a new realm. And at this time, he had coincidentally achieved a breakthrough to the quasi-emperor realm. This was why he had become so formidable at this moment. Following Chu Fan's breakthrough to the quasi-emperor realm, the golden light in the sky instantly covered the heavens and obscured the sun. Then this golden light instantly became comparable to the sun in the sky. It instantly made the crowd below feel as if two suns had risen in the sky. However, Chu Fan naturally did not know the situation on his side at this time. He was seen continuously absorbing the lightning law within this thundercloud. The power of these laws continued to push Chu Fan's strength to a higher level. A good while passed quickly again. After some more time passed, the qi surrounding Chu Fan finally stabilized at the quasi-emperor early stage. Moreover, it was as stable as a cultivator who had broken through to the quasi-emperor early stage decades ago. As Chu Fan's qi stabilized, the surrounding thunderclouds seemed to fear him. They were seen scattering and fleeing one after another. At the same time, even the lightning law in the sky completely disappeared. Seeing this scene, Chu Fan couldn't help but curl his lips. He hadn't expected the lightning tribulation in the sky to be so petty. He had only absorbed a bit of their origin. Yet, these fellows chose to flee directly now. This instantly made Chu Fan doubt whether they were still the heavenly Dao's lightning tribulation. However, if the lightning tribulation knew Chu Fan's thoughts, it would definitely curse him out. After all, what decent person undergoing tribulation could absorb the lightning law? He even absorbed the origin of their lightning to enhance his own strength. Such a situation had never occurred, not even with the former Xianyuan human emperor. Therefore, the current lightning tribulation naturally couldn't serve Chu Fan again. Thus, the terrifying thundercloud in the sky instantly vanished. It was replaced by golden light filling the sky. The moment this golden light shone upon the earth, Chu Fan's entire figure reappeared before the crowd. Of course, more importantly, the terrifying qi emanating from him made the people below shudder. At the same time, the golden dragon of destiny above Chang'an City instantly soared into the sky. Its qi was continuously transforming, and in just a moment, many luck scales grew on the body of this golden dragon of destiny. Each of these luck scales could allow a cultivator to grow. Naturally, Chu Fan could not pluck all these luck scales off. After all, every luck scale represented their great Xia empire. Therefore, he naturally wouldn't do such a foolish thing now. And as the golden dragon of destiny in the sky continuously transformed, the great Xia dynasty was also undergoing earth-shattering changes at this time. The most intuitive change was that the eastern region was continuously expanding, and even Chang'an City was growing larger. It was as if a transformation divine ability had been cast. Moreover, the great Xia dynasty also began to be enveloped by a fine golden mist at this time. Of course, this fine golden mist was not actual rain. Instead, it was the reward given by the heavenly Dao to the great Xia Empire for the great Xia dynasty's advancement into the great Xia Empire. When this fine golden mist fell upon cultivators, their cultivation instantly increased. If it fell upon heaven and earth treasure, then those heaven and earth treasure instantly leveled up. Chapter 505 The Advancement of the Great Xia Empire. Chu Wuxuang and Chu Yanran at the True King Realm. The armies of the Great Xia Empire were constantly improving at this moment. A golden drizzle was continuously sprinkling onto their bodies. Immediately after, the aura emanating from them began to rise steadily. In just a moment, the soldiers who were in the Grotto Heaven Realm had advanced to the Dharma Aspect Realm, while the soldiers in the Dharma Aspect Realm directly advanced to the King Realm. Furthermore, the generals in the Saint King Realm also directly advanced to the Great Saint Realm. It could be said that this advancement directly transcended ranks. Naturally, the generals of the commander level received the greatest advancement. This was because there was a strong connection between commander-level generals and the national destiny of the Great Xia Empire. Therefore, Chun Jibao, the commander of the Great Xia Empire, directly entered the Quasi-Emperor realm, although he was only in the Quasi-Emperor early stage for now. But he relied on the powerful strength of luck to directly advance to the Quasi-Emperor realm. This allowed his strength to receive a massive improvement. Meanwhile, the other commanders also advanced significantly at this time. Naturally, Chun Jibao was the only one who entered the Quasi-Emperor realm, as he was already close to the Quasi-Emperor realm to begin with. Chu Long and the others also naturally received massive advancements at this time. Chu Long, as the former prince of Jinbei, advanced directly to the Saint King realm this time due to the national destiny of the Great Xia Empire. One must know that although he had made some breakthroughs during this period, he was only in the entering Saint realm. Now, he had directly broken through to the late Saint King. It could be said that his breakthrough this time was enormous. Naturally, Chu Tianxiong and others were also continuously making breakthroughs by following the power of luck in the sky. Every person had already entered the entering Saint realm or above. The most terrifying ones now were Chu Wuxuang and Chu Yanran. The two of them were originally the prince and princess of the Great Xia Dynasty, and now they were the prince and princess of the Great Xia Empire. Therefore, the Golden Dragon of Destiny also appeared behind the two of them at this moment. Then, a great amount of luck continuously poured down from the sky. It then formed two golden beams of light, directly enveloping the two individuals. Immediately after, powerful auras instantly erupted from the bodies of Chu Wuxuang and Chu Yanran. At the same time, the aura around them was constantly growing. This was because the two of them originally possessed heaven-defying physiques. Therefore, their current cultivation was in the Dharma Aspect realm, but as these two luck light beams continuously surged into their bodies, their realm quickly reached the King realm directly. Moreover, it did not end after reaching the King realm. After a short while, their realm directly reached the True King realm. Upon seeing this scene, Heavenly Secret Master almost ripped out his entire beard. He had never imagined that his two young masters would have already broken through to the True King realm at the age of only 2 or 3. One must know that this was the True King realm, which was incredibly difficult for anyone to achieve a breakthrough to. Even those top prodigies would need to reach at least 20 or 30 years of age to break through to the True King realm. Yet his two young masters had directly surpassed these truly top prodigies by decades. This instantly made him feel completely unbelievable. At the same time, Heavenly Secret Master was secretly delighted in his heart, realizing he had finally made the right choice this time. Although he was following the son and daughter of the Chosen One displayed in the Tianji Pavilion this time, as long as Chu Fan grew up, he might also be able to break through to the Great Emperor realm. As the golden starlight continued to pour down from the sky, the cultivators in Chang'an City were also continuously making breakthroughs. The cultivators in Chang'an City, having completed their breakthroughs, excitedly looked up at the figure high above the 9 heavens. At this moment, Chu Fan was wearing a golden dragon robe, sitting cross-legged above the 9 heavens. Behind him, a golden dragon of destiny continuously enhanced his majestic presence. Golden light was constantly radiating from his body. My Great Xia Dynasty has finally become the Great Xia Empire. From now on, my Great Xia Empire will be the top power in this world. I never thought I could join an empire one day. A cultivator looked excitedly at Chu Fan in the sky, the excitement in his eyes indescribable at this moment. It could even be said that his current admiration was bordering on chi deviation. Even if Chu Fan ordered him to die, he probably wouldn't hesitate much. I never thought I would advance by a major realm after the empire advanced. Thank you, Emperor, for allowing me to advance by a major realm. Without the Emperor, I probably wouldn't have been able to break through a major realm even after decades. Yes, after the Great Xia Dynasty advanced to the Great Xia Empire, my cultivation level improved a lot. Furthermore, the spiritual chi between heaven and earth has also increased significantly. It might be easier for us to cultivate to higher realms. From now on, I'm also a person of the Empire. If anyone dares to provoke me, They are provoking the entire Great Xia Empire. Don't bring trouble to our empire, okay? Our empire doesn't need small troublemakers like you. Right, kick this small troublemaker out of our Great Xia Empire. Smiles were plastered on everyone's faces at this moment, showing just how excited they currently were. Moreover, the advancement of the Great Xia Dynasty's realm greatly improved their cultivation levels this time. Furthermore, because the Great Xia Dynasty advanced to become the Great Xia Empire, the spiritual qi within the territory of the Great Xia Dynasty, now the Great Xia Empire, increased severalfold. It could be said that the territory of the Great Xia Empire could now be compared to the remote areas of the Central Region. The territory of Chang'an City could even be compared to the Holy Lands of the Central Region. After all, this was the capital of the Great Xia Empire. The spiritual qi here had now reached a terrifying level. Just as everyone was cheering, Chu Fan, who was high above the 9 heavens, slowly opened his eyes. At the same time, the golden dragon of destiny behind him instantly transformed into a golden beam of light when he opened his eyes, descending directly into the imperial palace of Chang'an City. This instantly caused the spiritual qi in Chang'an City to greatly increase. The spiritual qi inside the imperial palace became even denser. At this moment, Chu Fan slowly cast his gaze downwards. At the same time, the aura around him had reached the Quasi-Emperor early stage, and more importantly, this aura was not far from the mid-stage Quasi-Emperor. The next second, he was seen slowly walking down from the sky. With every step he took, a golden lotus would emerge beneath his feet. The golden lotuses seemed to emerge from the void. Soon, a great Tao was paved between heaven and earth by these golden lotuses. Chu Fan slowly walked down this golden great Tao. At the same time, he stood between heaven and earth like a true human emperor. Naturally, as he slowly descended, the golden dragon of destiny inside the imperial palace also let out a cheerful roar. Chapter 506 Imperial Gift Pack, Emperor-Level Formation, Phoenix Guardian Beast. Not long after, Chu Fan stood atop the sacrificial altar like a true human sovereign. The golden Xianyuan sword at his waist was also trembling slightly at this moment. Chu Fan silently ran his hand over the Xianyuan sword, and then slowly looked towards the Great Xia Empire's army in front of him. At this moment, Chu Wushuang and Chu Yanran also woke up from their previous state. The two little ones still had a hint of confusion in their eyes, but the confusion in the eyes of Chu Yanran and Chu Wushuang quickly dissipated. What replaced it was excitement. They hadn't expected themselves to directly advance to the true king realm. Although the two little ones were still young, they knew just how powerful the true king realm was. This meant that at an age when most people couldn't even cultivate, they had already achieved a realm that was difficult for ordinary people to break through to. Immediately after, the two little ones excitedly ran to Chu Fan. Then, Chu Yanran wanted to rush into Chu Fan's embrace, but before she could take a step, she was held back by Chu Wushuang. As the Great Xia Empire's only imperial prince, Chu Wushuang naturally understood the etiquette expected of an imperial prince under the guidance of Heavenly Secret Master. Furthermore, since his imperial father still needed to speak, he naturally wouldn't allow his younger sister to disrupt what his imperial father was about to do next. At this moment, the generals and soldiers below finally reacted. Although they had wanted to salute Chu Fan initially, they were afraid of disturbing their young imperial prince and princess, so they naturally waited for the prince and princess to finish. "Greetings, Emperor!" This sound spread directly throughout the entire Chang'an City, and the cultivators and common people of Chang'an City, upon hearing this sound, all knelt towards the direction of the sacrificial altar. Their eyes were filled with adoration as they looked towards the sacrificial altar. "Greetings, Emperor!" Their voices were deafening, echoing throughout the vast Chang'an City. The cultivators who had rushed to the outside of Chang'an City also knelt towards the city at this moment, even though they were unsure whether their emperor could see them. However, the cultivators of the Great Xia Empire would certainly not forget such etiquette. Following Chu Fan's return to the sacrificial altar, the Great Xia Dynasty successfully advanced to become the Great Xia Empire this time. Subsequently, the entire Chang'an City entered a state of celebration. After all, they were now Chang'an City of the Great Xia Empire. Therefore, they naturally felt excited now. Many generals of the Great Xia Empire, who were formerly in the Great Sage Perfection realm, also wanted to immediately enter secluded cultivation. Although they did not break through from the Great Sage Perfection realm to the Quasi-Emperor realm this time, they were now not far from the Quasi-Emperor realm. Therefore, it wouldn't take them much time to achieve a breakthrough. As a result, many generals in the Great Sage Perfection realm headed to the Time Pagoda. On the other side, Chu Fan once again rode his golden Qilin war chariot back to the imperial palace, and upon returning, he dismissed his subordinates. He then immediately entered the system space. Because the Great Xia dynasty advanced to the Great Xia Empire, Chu Fan also received a reward from the system. After all, if the system didn't provide a reward for the Great Xia dynasty advancing to the Great Xia Empire, it would seem rather fake. Following this, Chu Fan directly opened his attribute panel. Host, Chu Fan. Physique, Innate Dao Body. Cultivation, Quasi-Emperor Early Stage. Descendants, Chu Wushuang, Chu Yanran. Weapons, Xianyuan Sword, Heaven-Slaying Spear, Human Sovereign Robe, Human Sovereign Armor. Summon characters, Chuan Ying, Alternative Path to Enlightenment. Fei Peng, Peak Quasi-Emperor Realm. Demon Venerable Chong Lu, Peak Quasi-Emperor Realm. Summoned Armies, Great Snow Dragon Cavalry, Yu Family Army. Special Forces, Net of Luo, Shadow Legion. Established Forces, Great Xia Empire, Underworld. System Mission, Unify the entire continent. Others, 1 Empire Gift Bag, 5 Great Sage Summoning Cards, 1 Unlimited Summoning Card. His attribute panel could now be said to be very comprehensive, not only detailing his cultivation, but also introducing the characters he had summoned. At the same time, his descendants also had a dedicated section. Of course, besides these, there were also the forces he had established. However, Chu Fan now turned his attention to the Empire Gift Bag, which he had received after the Great Xia dynasty advanced to the Great Xia Empire. It was just that Chu Fan hadn't opened the Empire Gift Bag initially. After all, at that time, he was still undergoing tribulation in the sky, so he naturally didn't have much time to open the Empire Gift Bag. But now that he was back in the Imperial Palace, he certainly had time to open the Empire Gift Bag. Thus, he looked at the Empire Gift Bag inside the system space with a mix of anticipation and excitement in his eyes. System, open the Empire Gift Bag. As Chu Fan's voice fell, the Empire Gift Bag in the system's space instantly transformed into a golden light that appeared within the system. Immediately afterward, several purple lights and 2 golden lights instantly appeared in the system's space. These purple lights and 2 golden lights quickly revealed their original forms. Ding, the host has opened the Empire Gift Bag. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the Great Emperor level formation, the Great Slaughter formation. Ding, congratulations to the host for obtaining 1 Quasi-Emperor level Protector Divine Beast, the Phoenix. Ding, congratulations to the host for obtaining 1 Quasi-Emperor level Army, the Human Sovereign Imperial Guard. Ding, congratulations to the host for obtaining 1 Alternative Path to Enlightenment Character Summoning Card for the Son of Heaven. Ding, congratulations to the host for obtaining 1 Alternative Path to Enlightenment Character Summoning Card for the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body. Ding, congratulations to the host for obtaining 1-time Pagoda Upgrade Card. The contents of Chu Fan's Empire Gift Bag quickly appeared within his system space. After seeing these dazzling rewards, an expression of sheer excitement appeared in Chu Fan's eyes. He hadn't expected the rewards this time to be so abundant. The first reward was the legendary Great Emperor level formation. It could be said that if he deployed this formation in Chang'an City, then aside from a Great Emperor level expert, it would be impossible for cultivators below the Great Emperor level to breach this formation. Moreover, even if a Great Emperor level expert wanted to breach this formation, it wouldn't be easy. Currently, a true Great Emperor level expert had yet to appear on the entire continent. Even the Supreme Being level experts rarely made a move. Therefore, with this Great Emperor level formation, the entire Chang'an City would be safer than even a restricted zone. The second reward in the gift bag this time was a phoenix, specifically a phoenix in the peak Quasi-Emperor realm. Of course, this phoenix was the Protector Divine Beast of the Great Xia Empire. So if the Great Xia Empire were to be promoted, this phoenix's cultivation would also increase. Chapter 507 The Emperor's Imperial Guard, the World Tree with Dragon Stride and Tiger's Leap. I am called the Emperor, please remember. Therefore, this phoenix was even more majestic than his Qilin. After all, his Qilin's cultivation was only at the Great Saint realm. Yet this phoenix had already reached the peak Quasi-Emperor realm. Thus, Chu Fan suddenly felt that his Qilin war chariot was no longer appealing. However, Chu Fan quickly turned his attention to the reward in the next gift package. After all, the real grand prize was still to come. The next reward was the Human Sovereign Imperial Guard, the Imperial Guard belonging exclusively to the Human Sovereign. Moreover, it was a Quasi-Emperor level army. Chu Fan knew with just a glance that this army was definitely not simple. Otherwise, how could it dare to be named Human Sovereign? Following this, Chu Fan directly opened the introduction regarding this army. The next second, the introduction to this army instantly appeared before him. This Human Sovereign Imperial Guard was the Imperial Guard created by the Human Sovereign of the mythical era. Every one of them was a favored prodigy of that era. At the same time, every Imperial Guard, upon maturing, was a top-tier general. However, within that army, they could only serve as ordinary soldiers. Nevertheless, in that era, Even an ordinary member of the human sovereign imperial guard held a position no weaker than a typical partial general. And this army certainly did not disappoint Chu Fan, because this army was led by a peak quasi-emperor realm expert. Legend has it that this peak quasi-emperor realm expert was once a follower of the human sovereign, and besides this peak quasi-emperor realm expert, there were also 4 vice-generals ranging from quasi-emperor early stage to quasi-emperor late stage. They were all prodigies of that era, but after challenging the human sovereign and being defeated by him, they completely became members of the human sovereign imperial guard. Yet, they eventually willingly followed the human sovereign and became deputy commanders in the human sovereign imperial guard. Besides these quasi-emperor level deputy commanders and the commander, the remaining 200 people were great saint level experts. Of course, the size of this army, excluding these few deputy commanders and the true commander, was only these 200 people. They were the human sovereign imperial guard, composed of 200 great saint-level experts. Although the number was indeed very small, perhaps not even enough to fill the gap between teeth compared to ordinary armies. However, their strength far surpassed that of many armies. In fact, picking any soldier from this imperial guard could challenge a general of an empire, as most of those empire generals were great saint-level cultivators. Furthermore, some empire generals were Saint King-level cultivators. This was why the former human sovereign was able to appoint every soldier in the human sovereign imperial guard to the rank of partial general. After all, where could one find such experts? I didn't expect a mere army to reach this level. If the size of this army were slightly larger, wouldn't it be able to sweep across the entire central region? After Chu Fan finished reading the introduction about this army, his face showed a trace of shock. He had not expected this army to be so terrifying. The deputy commanders and the commander alone had already reached the quasi-emperor realm, and every soldier in the army had reached the great saint realm. However, Chu Fan also knew that this army was established when a human sovereign reached his peak. Otherwise, how could he possibly have created such a terrifying army? Moreover, with such a terrifying army, Chu Fan no longer had any worries about the imperial palace. Since such a terrifying army was guarding the entire imperial palace, he would not be afraid, even if he took all the military forces of the Great Xia Empire away. After all, this army could already sweep away any invading enemy. After expressing his emotion, Chu Fan slowly looked towards the next reward below. Although this reward truly made Chu Fan feel incredible, and Chu Fan was even still in shock. However, he naturally would not forget that there was only one more reward in this gift package. He then slowly shifted his gaze to the introduction of the other reward below. Looking at this reward, Chu Fan's eyes were filled with anticipation. After all, this was a summoning card for an alternative path to enlightenment existence. An alternative path to enlightenment existence was comparable to a great emperor-level expert. Moreover, Chu Fan had genuinely witnessed the formidable power of an alternative path to enlightenment existence. After all, Chuaning was an existence that suppressed a holy land until it dared not resist. He had not expected to summon such an existence again this time. Since Chu Fan had now upgraded the Great Xia Dynasty to the Great Xia Empire, the next opponents he would have to face, besides the forces in the central region, were the Supremes in the restricted zones. Therefore, for every additional alternative path to enlightenment existence, Chu Fan's apprehension towards the Supremes in the restricted zones decreased by 1 point. What was more important was that the forces in the central region all possessed ultimate emperor weapons, which naturally made Chu Fan feel somewhat tricky to deal with. However, with the addition of another alternative path to enlightenment existence this time, Chu Fan naturally felt very excited. What made Chu Fan even more excited was that the name of this alternative path to enlightenment existence sounded very familiar to him. He then immediately opened the introduction card for this alternative path to enlightenment existence. Immediately after, Chu Fan instantly understood who he had summoned. It turned out that this time he had summoned the Tianzi from the perfect world, the existence known as the chaotic ancient F4. He was also the only young prodigy who could fight against that heavenly emperor during his youth. More importantly, Tianzi had been born 10 times and was invincible for 10 generations, earning him the title of the 10-crowned king in that world. It could be said that in that era, he was the representative of the invincible prodigies. At the same time, he was one of the 4 most top-tier prodigies of that era. Moreover, Tianzi eventually achieved the Immortal King realm, an existence capable of entering the river of time at any moment. The most important thing was Tianzi's famous quote, "Dragon strides and tiger steps the world tree. My name is Tianzi. Please remember." This line had been remembered by Chu Fan for a long time in his previous life. He had not expected to summon this person this time. But what made Chu Fan slightly helpless was that the one he summoned was only an alternative path to enlightenment existence. One must know that this person's true peak period had reached the level of an immortal king giant. But now, the one he summoned was only an alternative path to enlightenment existence. This made Chu Fan start to doubt the system's operation. After all, in his opinion, Tianzi should at least be a great emperor-level expert. Perhaps the summoned Tianzi should even possess heavenly emperor-level combat power. Only this way could he be worthy of being the chaotic ancient F4, the true 10-crown king. However, Chu Fan believed that even if Tianzi's cultivation was only the alternative path to enlightenment, his strength would definitely not be weaker than those so-called great emperors. After all, true prodigies were inherently existences that fought above their realm, and Chu Fan believed Tianzi could do the same. Chapter 508 The Upgrade of the Great Perfection Holy Body and the Time Pagoda. After looking at the summon card for the Son of Heaven, Chu Fan, this young cub, shifted his gaze to the next reward summon card. The next reward summon card also surprised Chu Fan. He didn't expect this reward summon card to be a Great Accomplishment Sacred Body. The Great Accomplishment Sacred Body was a very tragic existence in that world. At the same time, it was also the true foundation of the human race in that world. Of course, most importantly, in that world, the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body contributed the most. After all, the saying, "No great emperor in the human race, 9 great accomplishment sacred bodies battle the firmament," was very resounding. At the same time, in that world, the human race's sacred body also propped up one era after another. After the human race's sacred body reached major achievement, it could fight against a great emperor-level expert. This was why the human race's sacred body could support the human race in that era. However, the human race's sacred body ultimately became a source of regret. After all, they were cursed by the Forbidden Zone, making it extremely difficult to truly achieve major achievement. Even at minor achievement, it would attract heavenly tribulation. Only that Emperor Yi later overcame the true tribulation and became a great accomplishment sacred body. Of course, this Emperor Yi would also protect all living beings in the future, becoming the true co-ruler of all realms. But even so, the contributions of the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body cannot be denied. The Great Accomplishment Sacred Body summoned this time had also reached the alternative path to enlightenment. And most importantly, the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body's combat power could contend with a truly great emperor-level expert. Therefore, if they were to face those supreme being-level experts, a single Great Accomplishment Sacred Body might be able to handle several. In that case, the current Great Xia Empire could deal with a supreme being from a Forbidden Zone. Because in this world, a single supreme being from a Forbidden Zone has at most 10 members. And now, the Great Xia Dynasty has 3 existences who have reached the alternative path to enlightenment. Each of these 3 existences who have reached the alternative path to enlightenment can handle 3 or 4 supreme being-level experts. Therefore, it would be very easy for them to deal with 10 supreme beings. Thus, the current Great Xia Empire can already fight against the Forbidden Zone. Of course, the current Chu Fan would not foolishly go to war with this Forbidden Zone. After all, he is still constantly accumulating strength. When Chu Fan's strength reaches a point where he can pacify the Forbidden Zone, he will definitely not hesitate to directly destroy all the Forbidden Zones in this world. After all, the Forbidden Zone is considered the ultimate boss in this world. So Chu Fan naturally would not hold back. However, his current strength is not enough to pacify all the supreme beings in the Forbidden Zones. So Chu Fan naturally cannot choose to act at this time. Moreover, more importantly, these supreme beings from the Forbidden Zones have not yet appeared, indicating that now is not the time for these supreme beings from the Forbidden Zones to act. With such an opportunity for growth, how could Chu Fan possibly act? After all, he only has one life. After Chu Fan finished reading the introduction about the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body, he slowly shifted his gaze to the last reward. The last reward surprised him a little, because the last reward was actually an upgrade card for the Time Pagoda. One must know that the current Time Pagoda is already very powerful. If the Time Pagoda were to be upgraded again, then perhaps the strength of Chu Fan's Great Xia Empire would receive an unprecedented boost. Thinking of this, Chu Fan excitedly opened the Time Pagoda's upgrade card, and then the introduction to the Time Pagoda's upgrade card appeared directly before Chu Fan. It turns out that this Time Pagoda upgrade card can increase the time within the Time Pagoda by 10-fold. That is to say, after upgrading the Time Pagoda, the relationship between the Time Pagoda and the outside world will be 100:1. In other words, cultivating for 100 days inside the Time Pagoda means only 1 day has passed in the outside world. And cultivating for 100 years inside the Time Pagoda means only 1 year has passed in the outside world. What's more, the spiritual energy inside the Time Pagoda is even stronger than the spiritual energy in the Eastern region. Then it would be very easy for the Great Xia Empire's army and generals to improve their strength. Thinking of this, Chu Fan's eyes were also filled with anticipation. Then he directly used his Time Pagoda upgrade card. System, upgrade the Time Pagoda. As Chu Fan's words fell, the Time Pagoda also emitted a brilliant light, and then the Time Pagoda was directly upgraded under Chu Fan's witness. At this moment, there wasn't much change on the outside of the Time Pagoda, but inside, one could feel the flow rate becoming very fast, and the spiritual energy inside also far exceeded what it was initially. Immediately after the Time Pagoda finished upgrading, the various experts cultivating inside the Time Pagoda also sensed the changes in the Time Pagoda, so they all looked towards the direction of the imperial capital. However, soon these cultivators inside the Time Pagoda began to cultivate again. Since their emperor had already upgraded the Time Pagoda, then next, they would use the Time Pagoda to quickly improve their strength. In this way, they would be able to quickly enter the central region in the future and then directly take down the central region completely. And as the Time Pagoda finished upgrading, at this moment, within the profound ice coffin inside the Time Pagoda, silver-white light continuously gathered at Chu Chen's chest. These silver-white lights continuously repaired his completely destroyed supreme bone at his chest. It was as if this supreme bone could grow back. If Chu Fan were here, he would definitely be greatly astonished. As Chu Fan's Great Xia dynasty successfully ascended to the Great Xia Empire, the central region at this time was not as peaceful as imagined. Due to the underworld, the Heavenly Dao Alliance also began to become anxious. And after a few days of ideological struggle, the leader of the Heavenly Dao Alliance also directly issued the final order. That is to say, the leader of the Heavenly Dao Alliance issued an order that was enough to change the entire pattern of the central region, because the underworld brought immense pressure to the Heavenly Dao Alliance. Therefore, the leader of the Heavenly Dao Alliance wanted to unify the entire central region to enhance the strength of the Heavenly Dao Alliance. Subsequently, on this day, dozens of quasi-emperor level experts appeared in the Heavenly Dao Alliance. One must know that there couldn't be so many quasi-emperor level experts among the top forces in the central region unless they all united. Otherwise, how could they possess so many quasi-emperor level experts? But the Heavenly Dao Alliance was indeed able to produce so many quasi-emperor level experts. Subsequently, the Heavenly Dao Alliance directly dispatched all its armies, and then, without any hesitation, directly launched an attack against the Great Wind Empire opposite them. The Great Wind Empire was once considered an imperial-level force. It was just that due to a past dark turmoil, their ultimate emperor weapon was completely destroyed in that dark turmoil. This also caused the Great Wind Empire to become a lower-tier force among the top forces. Chapter 509, A Tremendous Change in the Central Region. The Heavenly Dao Alliance deploys troops to the Great Wind Empire. Furthermore, the leader of the Heavenly Dao Alliance personally led the Heavenly Dao Alliance's quasi-emperor level experts and army straight toward the Great Wind Empire to attack. This incident completely plunged the central region into shock once again. The turmoil between the underworld and the Taishan Holy Land had already astonished the central region, but they never expected that the Heavenly Dao Alliance would now assemble such a massive army to launch an assault on the Great Wind Empire. The strength of the Heavenly Dao Alliance was truly formidable. The number of great saint-level experts appearing this time already reached several hundred. One must know that an ordinary Holy Land only possesses around 100 great saint-level experts. Yet, the Heavenly Dao Alliance had several hundred great saint-level experts appear this time, a level of power that made the entire central region feel unbelievable. Moreover, besides these great saint-level experts, the number of Heavenly Dao Alliance members at the entering Saint and Saint King level was countless. Furthermore, the majority of the Heavenly Dao Alliance army strength had reached the King realm. Therefore, in just a short period, the Heavenly Dao Alliance captured more than half of the Great Wind Empire's territory. The Great Wind Empire instantly fell into turmoil. They never expected the Heavenly Dao Alliance to seize half of their territory so quickly. At this moment, in Tianfeng City, the imperial capital of the Great Wind Empire. It was also the most powerful location within the Great Wind Empire. Inside the imperial palace of Tianfeng City, the emperor of the Great Wind Empire gazed ahead with terrifying gloom in his eyes. Standing before him were the ministers of the Great Wind Empire, whose eyes were also filled with anger at this time. They had not expected the Heavenly Dao Alliance to choose to directly attack their Great Wind Empire. Does anyone have a good solution to counter the Heavenly Dao Alliance's offensive? If we cannot resolve the Heavenly Dao Alliance's attack this time, I fear our Great Wind Empire will suffer unprecedented damage. The Emperor of the Great Wind Empire slowly stepped forward and spoke softly while looking at the ministers below, though a hint of fury could be heard in his voice. Clearly, the Emperor of the Great Wind Empire was also extremely enraged by the Heavenly Dao Alliance. Upon hearing the emperor's words, the ministers below glanced around nervously, and some even lowered their heads, afraid to speak. This was because the strength of the Heavenly Dao Alliance was already deeply impressed upon them. It could even be said that the Heavenly Dao Alliance's power was considered the most prominent existence in the entire central region. However, initially, the Heavenly Dao Alliance did not dare to strike at the central region's top forces because they did not possess a great Emperor-level ultimate Emperor weapon. Otherwise, how could the Heavenly Dao Alliance's strength fail to conquer an ordinary top force? Furthermore, the most crucial factor was the mutual restraint imposed on the Heavenly Dao Alliance by the central region's top forces. It was also for this reason that the Heavenly Dao Alliance had been slowly gathering experts. Otherwise, the Great War would have erupted hundreds or even thousands of years ago. What we can do now is invite experts from the top forces to take charge. They cannot watch our Great Wind Empire be destroyed, or else the Heavenly Dao Alliance's next target might be them. An old minister sighed softly when he saw that none of the surrounding ministers intended to speak, and he slowly stepped forward and said. However, as he spoke, his face carried a hint of helplessness. Although their Great Wind Empire was considered a top force, the dark turmoil had caused many top experts within the Great Wind Empire to perish. At the same time, their ultimate Emperor weapon was completely destroyed during that great battle. This was why the Great Wind Empire was currently in such an awkward situation. Who should we seek aid from now? The Emperor of the Great Wind Empire felt helpless upon hearing the minister's words, but at this moment, he could only look at the minister with resignation and ask. After all, there were probably few forces left that could resist the Heavenly Dao Alliance. More importantly, which force could step forward to stop the Heavenly Dao Alliance now? This was the thing they should be thinking about the most right now. Perhaps we should seek aid from the underworld now. After all, the underworld's strength is well known. Moreover, last time, the underworld's experts directly pressured the Tianxian Holy Land, forcing them to reluctantly choose reconciliation. If they make a move, the Heavenly Dao Alliance might not have the chance to attack our Great Wind Empire again. Just as the Emperor of the Great Wind Empire finished speaking, a general at the Great Saint level slowly stepped forward and said. However, a trace of hesitation could be seen on the general's face. After all, the underworld had not appeared for long, so he did not know whether the underworld would truly help them resist the Heavenly Dao Alliance. The force with the most power to truly resist the Heavenly Dao Alliance now should be the underworld. However, we don't know if the underworld will help us, and if we invite the underworld, they might turn out to be an even fiercer tiger. As the general's voice faded, another civil minister slowly stepped forward and spoke. After he finished speaking, a look of worry could be seen on his face. Clearly, he was also very uneasy about the underworld. Most importantly, the underworld's strength was unfathomable to them. Although the Heavenly Dao Alliance was terrifying right now, he was even less willing to provoke the underworld. The other ministers reacted after hearing this minister's words, and they frowned as they looked at the general at the Great Saint level who had just spoken. If that is the case, then who should we seek aid from now? The general at the Great Saint level who had just spoken also reacted after hearing the minister's words, and he slowly frowned and looked back at the minister, asking. After hearing the general's question, everyone else also turned their attention to this minister. After all, if they could not seek aid from the underworld now, then who should they turn to for help? Why must we seek aid from a single force? Wouldn't it suffice if we sought aid from the entire central region? This minister was clearly prepared, and he spoke slowly without the slightest panic on his face. After speaking, he slowly shifted his gaze toward the Emperor of the Great Wind Empire. Clearly, he was waiting for the reply of the Emperor of the Great Wind Empire. The Emperor of the Great Wind Empire instantly reacted after hearing the minister's words. Immediately, his eyes lit up. At this moment, he finally understood the minister's intention. The Great Wind Empire was indeed facing a catastrophe now. If they sought aid from an ordinary force, they might not have a chance to survive. For example, if they sought aid from the underworld, they might invite the underworld, a fierce tiger. But if they sought aid from the entire world, who could possibly stand idly by? After all, who could bear to watch the Heavenly Dao Alliance grow stronger? Chapter 5: 10 Top Powers Respond, the Silent Underworld. The other ministers clearly understood the situation now, and they looked at their emperor with excitement on their faces. Of course, at this time, some ministers were also worried. After all, if they requested aid from the entire world, would their Great Wind Empire be carved up by the rest of the world in the future? Naturally, they had no retreat now. After half a day of discussion, the Emperor of the Great Wind Empire and his ministers directly issued a final plea for help to the entire world. This news quickly spread throughout the central region. The Emperor of the Great Wind Empire first severely denounced the actions of the Heavenly Dao Alliance, and then stated that if the Heavenly Dao Alliance were allowed to continue growing in this manner, then the Great Wind Empire would serve as an example for other top forces. Perhaps they would be the ones the Heavenly Dao Alliance would annihilate next. Thus, the top forces of the entire central region instantly understood. Even those top forces that had intended to watch the show began to discuss the matter. At this moment, in Purple Mansion Holy Land, one of the top holy lands in the central region, the Holy Lord of the Holy Land was leading the Grand Elders and Elders of Purple Mansion Holy Land in discussing the war between the Great Wind Empire and the Heavenly Dao Alliance. Now that the Great Wind Empire has requested aid from the entire central region, no matter how much we at Purple Mansion Holy Land want to watch, we cannot stand idly by. If the Heavenly Dao Alliance truly grows strong, perhaps we will be the next Great Wind Empire. The Holy Lord of the Holy Land of Purple Mansion Holy Land spoke with a hint of helplessness in his eyes. He had initially been one of the main forces intending to watch the show. However, he did not expect the Great Wind Empire to directly push these top forces to the forefront, forcing them to make a decision. Although the Great Wind Empire has not yet been annihilated, the time until its destruction is short. Moreover, I believe that besides us, other top forces will also go to support the Great Wind Empire. At that time, the Heavenly Dao Alliance might be annihilated, and we can seize the opportunity in this great war to make a name for our Purple Mansion Holy Land. As the Holy Lord of the Holy Land of Purple Mansion Holy Land finished speaking, an aged Grand Elder slowly stepped forward and spoke. His eyes held a hint of excitement. Although they knew that the Heavenly Dao Alliance currently possessed dozens of quasi-emperor level experts, the number of quasi-emperors among the top forces of the central region was far more than just a few. Therefore, it would naturally not be too difficult for them to defeat the Heavenly Dao Alliance. At that time, the entire Purple Mansion Holy Land would become renowned throughout the world. The other Grand Elders and Elders nodded in agreement after hearing the Grand Elder's words, clearly understanding this point as well. After a brief discussion, the Holy Lord of the Holy Land of Purple Mansion Holy Land and the Grand Elders of Purple Mansion Holy Land immediately released a message to the entire world. Purple Mansion Holy Land was willing to dispatch quasi-emperor level experts to lead the forces of Purple Mansion Holy Land to aid the Great Wind Empire. Following the release of this news by Purple Mansion Holy Land, other top forces also followed suit and released their announcements. Even Tianxian Holy Land released such a message at this time. The entire central region was instantly shaken. After all, these top forces had all announced that they would oppose the Heavenly Dao Alliance to the end. This meant that this conflict would escalate into a true great war. Some cultivators in the central region were even considering fleeing the region. After all, such a massive war was no longer something they could participate in. However, after these top forces released their news, the underworld, which everyone had been anticipating, did not release any message. It seemed as if they had fallen completely silent. Many cultivators in the central region were discussing news about the underworld. After all, the strength the underworld displayed last time had left them feeling incredible. Naturally, they now hoped the underworld would step out and fight the Heavenly Dao Alliance. Why hasn't the underworld chosen to appear? Do they think they can't defeat the Heavenly Dao Alliance either? How is that possible? Although the Heavenly Dao Alliance has so many quasi-emperor level experts and great saint level experts this time, with so many top forces in the central region united, how could the Heavenly Dao Alliance possibly be their opponent? That's right, the underworld could help this great war even if they just sent a few quasi-emperor level experts. But they remain completely motionless now. Do they truly not want to participate in this great war? Perhaps the underworld is an assassin organization, which is why they are not planning to participate in this great war. Blood Rain Tower is also an assassin organization, yet they are still participating in this great war. The actions of the underworld puzzled everyone in the central region, and even the great saint-level experts among the top forces did not understand why the underworld chose to do this. In their view, this was the best time to become famous throughout the world, so the underworld's actions naturally seemed somewhat unbelievable to them. Meanwhile, on the side of the Heavenly Dao Alliance, the Alliance Master frowned after receiving news of the changes across the central region. At this moment, several elderly men and middle-aged men with profound auras were standing beside the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance. The auras of these elderly men and middle-aged men had all reached the Quasi-Emperor level. They were clearly the Quasi-Emperor level experts of the Heavenly Dao Alliance. I didn't expect our Heavenly Dao Alliance to provoke the dissatisfaction of so many forces, but as long as the underworld does intervene, we won't lose. A Quasi-Emperor level expert of the Heavenly Dao Alliance slowly spoke. This was the person who had previously seen the existence of a quasi-emperor level expert following the alternative path to enlightenment within the underworld. After hearing that the underworld had not intervened, he finally relaxed. After all, as long as their Heavenly Dao Alliance did not clash with the underworld, all these quasi-emperors of the Heavenly Dao Alliance believed they could defeat the other forces. After all, they had been preparing for tens of thousands of years. Is the underworld really that powerful to make an old fellow like you so worried? Another elderly man beside him slowly stepped forward and spoke mockingly, though it was also evident that a hint of worry remained on his face. Clearly, although he had not witnessed the underworld's power, he had heard about the existence of those following the alternative path to enlightenment within the organization. You haven't witnessed the true strength of the underworld, so naturally you aren't afraid of them. If you really can't stand it, why don't you directly challenge the underworld now? Perhaps then you'll truly know their strength. The Heavenly Dao Alliance Quasi-Emperor who had just spoken rolled his eyes at the other Quasi-Emperor, then offered this poor suggestion to the Heavenly Dao Alliance Quasi-Emperor. The Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance felt somewhat helpless seeing this scene. However, at this time, he could only calmly wait for news to arrive. Chapter 5:11 7 stars align and appear in the world. The Supreme Being of the Forbidden Zone awakens. The main reason the Heavenly Dao Alliance acted this way was to see if the underworld would intervene. They also wanted to gauge the underworld's true strength. Of course, if the underworld were to intervene, the Heavenly Dao Alliance would naturally consider the underworld their enemy. However, this would make their goal of unifying the entire central domain even more difficult. Although other top experts possess ultimate emperor weapons, their threat to the Heavenly Dao Alliance is not that great, because the Heavenly Dao Alliance has its secret trump cards. Moreover, while the ultimate emperor weapons of these top experts can unleash power comparable to alternative path, to enlightenment, or even the Supreme Being realm, they cannot sustain this level of power indefinitely. Therefore, the Heavenly Dao Alliance is naturally not afraid. However, the underworld truly has an existence that achieved alternative path to enlightenment, so the Heavenly Dao Alliance is naturally most wary of the underworld. Thus, the Heavenly Dao Alliance leader was constantly waiting for news from the underworld. He wanted to see if the underworld would try to stop the Heavenly Dao Alliance. However, as time passed, other forces converged towards the Great Wind Empire, but the underworld seemed to have completely vanished from the central domain. They paid no attention to the war between the Heavenly Dao Alliance and other forces. Instead, they fell into complete silence. However, this outcome shocked all cultivators in the central domain. At the same time, many top experts were speculating about the underworld's actions. They were all wondering why the underworld didn't intervene. However, what these cultivators in the central domain didn't know was that the underworld was also very quiet at this time. Of course, the underworld was aware of the outside world's news, and at this time, Wang Chongyang had also directly transmitted the events happening in the central domain to the eastern domain. Chu Fan, who had just finished upgrading the Great Xia Empire in the eastern domain, was very leisurely at this moment. For the past few days, he had been accompanying Chu Wushuang and Chu Yanran, and Chu Fan had not considered directly attacking the central domain at this time. Although the Great Xia Dynasty's strength was already very formidable, they had not yet truly ascertained the Heavenly Dao Alliance's strength. However, the fact that the Heavenly Dao Alliance could disregard the central domain's top experts indicated just how powerful the Heavenly Dao Alliance was. More importantly, Chu Fan learned from Heavenly Secret Master that the Heavenly Dao Alliance leader possessed a red dragon fate, meaning the Heavenly Dao Alliance leader's strength and the Heavenly Dao Alliance itself could not be that simple. Therefore, without a clear understanding of the Heavenly Dao Alliance's true strength, Chu Fan naturally did not intend to personally confront the Heavenly Dao Alliance. Of course, more importantly, if the Great Xia Empire were to directly attack the central domain now, it might cause the Heavenly Dao Alliance and these top experts in the central domain to unite. At that point, the Great Xia Empire would truly have no chance. This was also why Chu Fan didn't directly intervene. However, while Chu Fan was accompanying Chu Wushuang and Chu Yanran, a blood-red light suddenly appeared in the sky. At the same time, the phenomenon of 7 stars alignment appeared in the sky, instantly capturing Chu Fan's gaze. He looked at the 7 stars alignment in the sky with a hint of shock in his eyes. At the same time, Heavenly Secret Master also appeared directly beside Chu Fan, looking at the 7 stars alignment in the sky with shock and disbelief in his eyes. Did this day finally arrive? But can the current Great Xia Empire truly unify the entire central domain? Looking at the 7 stars alignment in the sky, Heavenly Secret Master spoke slowly, but at this moment his eyes held a hint of worry. Although the current Great Xia Empire's strength was indeed good, however, The Great Xia Empire had only just been established, so unifying the entire central domain would naturally be somewhat difficult. Even Heavenly Secret Master dared not believe that Chu Fan could easily resolve the battle in the central domain. Of course, the 7 stars alignment in the sky was not only seen by Chu Fan and Heavenly Secret Master. Even the Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone also saw the 7 stars alignment in the sky at this time. Consequently, many Supreme Beings also awoke because of the 7 stars alignment in the sky. They looked at the sky with a hint of surprise in their eyes. I didn't expect the legendary 7 stars alignment to appear. It seems another excellent prodigy has emerged in this era, but how could it be so easy to start a war and break through to the human emperor realm? A Supreme Being looked towards the central domain and spoke slowly, his gaze at this moment seeming to have penetrated time to look at the Heavenly Dao Alliance leader, who had already started a war in the central domain. The possessor of the Red Dragon Fate. Perhaps he might truly break through to the human emperor realm. Another Supreme Being at this moment directly saw through the fate possessed by the Heavenly Dao Alliance leader, and he said with a smile on his lips. Of course, it could be seen that there was not much shock or surprise on this Supreme Being's face, although they greatly feared Xian Yuan Human Emperor. However, the Red Dragon Fate and the Human Emperor Fate possessed by Xian Yuan Human Emperor were still very different. So they naturally weren't afraid of the possessor of the Red Dragon Fate growing up. Even if he truly grows up in the future, he will merely be our nourishment. Another Supreme Being also spoke slowly at this time, and after speaking, he closed his eyes. There was no hint of worry in his eyes, as if all of this was child's play to him. The thoughts in the minds of the other Supreme Beings were similar to this Supreme Being's thoughts. They had not thought of coming out into the world now, because the path they were waiting for had not yet arrived. Therefore, these Supreme Being level experts naturally did not intend to leave now. They would only appear when that path truly emerged. Moreover, even if the possessor of the Red Dragon Fate grew up by then, they would not be afraid. After all, they had so many Supreme Beings in their Forbidden Zone. Even when Xian Yuan Human Emperor had just achieved the Human Emperor realm, they could suppress Xian Yuan Human Emperor. Of course, when Xian Yuan Human Emperor was at his peak, they were naturally no match for Xian Yuan Human Emperor. After all, when Xian Yuan Human Emperor was at his peak, he was known as a Great Emperor Realm peak level expert. Even if they underwent ultimate sublimation, they could not be Xian Yuan Human Emperor's opponent. The Human Emperor Realm and the Great Emperor Realm belong to the same realm. It's just that the Human Emperor Realm is slightly stronger than the Great Emperor Realm, because the Human Emperor Realm is not just about breakthrough to the Great Emperor Realm. It also requires gathering the luck of the entire world upon oneself. This is also why the Human Emperor Realm, although it is the Great Emperor Realm, has combat power that far exceeds the Great Emperor Realm. At the same time, this is also why the Human Emperor Realm is listed separately. After all, one Human Emperor Realm expert can defeat several Great Emperor Realm experts. And after reaching the peak of the Human Emperor Realm, one can also be called a Heavenly Emperor. So how could the strength of cultivators in this realm be weak? Chapter 5:12 The Mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the Oriole behind. Chu Fan must be the Oriole. This is why many cultivators desire to become Human Emperor Realm experts. Of course, in these millions of years, only Xian Yuan Human Emperor achieved the Human Emperor Realm. One could even say that in tens of millions of years, only Xian Yuan Human Emperor achieved the Human Emperor Realm. All others became Great Emperor Realm. Naturally, the Great Emperor Realm is already a level beyond the reach of prodigy-level cultivators. Just as all the Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone continued to fall into slumber, Chu Fan, in Chang'an City of the Great Xia Empire, looked at Heavenly Secret Master with a serious expression and began to question him. What does 7 stars alignment represent? As Chu Fan, who had transmigrated, he naturally knew about 7 stars alignment, but he didn't know what the 7 stars alignment in this world truly represented. And as the current inheritor of Tianji Pavilion, Chu Fan didn't believe that Heavenly Secret Master would know this. 7 stars alignment signifies that this continent is about to plunge into turmoil, and its appearance also means that someone on this continent might truly attain the Human Emperor realm. The Emperor with the Human Emperor fate is likely the Human Emperor who will end the wars on this continent. After hearing Chu Fan's words, Heavenly Secret Master's face showed a hint of excitement. Although the current Great Xia Empire might not be able to resolve the continent's turmoil, he believed that Chu Fan, as the chosen one with the Human Emperor fate, could resolve this turmoil. So, the appearance of 7 stars alignment now means I have to resolve the continent's chaos. Chu Fan didn't expect to become involved in the gossip. So, he looked at Heavenly Secret Master again and asked. As he spoke, a hint of battle intent appeared in his eyes. If it were truly so, he naturally wouldn't mind conquering the entire continent and achieving the true Human Emperor realm. Although 7 stars alignment has appeared, the Emperor can still choose not to act for now. After all, in this era, the Emperor is not the only possessor of the human Emperor fate. Now that 7 stars alignment has just appeared, those overlords with Red Dragon fate or Phoenix fate should also be emerging. Heavenly Secret Master shook his head after hearing Chu Fan's words. He knew that the current continent had the leader of the Heavenly Dao Alliance with Red Dragon fate and a prodigy with Phoenix fate. And as the possessor of the human Emperor fate, Chu Fan naturally didn't need to act yet. Upon hearing Heavenly Secret Master's words, Chu Fan immediately understood. At the same time, he already knew that the possessor of the Red Dragon fate was the leader of the Heavenly Dao Alliance. So, you mean for me to reap the benefits? The next second, Chu Fan looked at Heavenly Secret Master with a playful expression and asked. However, as he spoke, there was a resolute look in Chu Fan's eyes. Precisely. The appearance of 7 stars alignment probably means that the Central Region has already fallen into war, and besides the possessor of the Red Dragon fate from the Heavenly Dao Alliance, there's probably no one else who could instigate the entire Central Region's war. After hearing Chu Fan's words, Heavenly Secret Master nodded in agreement. At the same time, his gaze drifted towards the Central Region. He had already guessed why 7 stars alignment had arrived early. It was likely because the leader of the Heavenly Dao Alliance in the Central Region had already ignited the war in the Central Region. Only then would 7 stars alignment arrive early. Of course, it might also be because Chu Fan had resolved the 4 regions of East, West, South, and North in advance, which triggered the arrival of 7 stars alignment. But no matter what, everyone's gaze was now directed towards the Central Region, or rather, everyone's gaze was directed towards the leader of the Heavenly Dao Alliance. After all, the human Emperor fate inherently possessed the secret of being able to conceal one's fate. Apart from cultivators like Heavenly Secret Master, who cultivate using the Heavenly Secret, even Supreme Being level experts could not see through the human Emperor fate that Chu Fan possessed. Of course, the Xianyuan family, who once possessed the human Emperor fate, could naturally discern it, but they would also need to meet Chu Fan to truly see the possessor of the human Emperor fate. This is also why the Supreme Beings in the Forbidden Zone only guessed that this era had a possessor of the Red Dragon fate. Just as Chu Fan and Heavenly Secret Master were discussing the possessor of the Red Dragon fate, news from the Central Region finally reached Chu Fan. Chu Fan looked at the news from the Central Region, and a playful smile instantly appeared on his face. I didn't expect the leader of the Heavenly Dao Alliance to actually launch a war. But now, the Underworld doesn't need to do anything. We only need the leader of the Heavenly Dao Alliance to act as our vanguard. Perhaps without us even needing to act, the leader of the Heavenly Dao Alliance can take down the entire Central Region. At this moment, Chu Fan also had an idea in his mind. He had decided that he, the Mantis, would wait until the end. Although now was the best time for their Great Xia Empire to enter and control the Central Region. The Great Xia Empire had not truly risen yet, or rather, the Great Xia Empire did not have the absolute strength to suppress the entire Central Region. Therefore, Chu Fan intended to let the Heavenly Dao Alliance and the top forces of the Central Region fight to a mutually destructive state before entering the Central Region. Perhaps the leader of the Heavenly Dao Alliance launched an attack on the Central Region at this moment because the Underworld displayed too much strength. Heavenly Secret Master added quietly from the side. He didn't believe that the possessor of the Red Dragon fate would be so decisive. It was probably related to the strength the Underworld displayed last time. He naturally knew that the Underworld was the Great Xia Empire's force in the Central Region. If that's the case, then let them continue fighting. What does it matter if they fight until the sky turns dark and the earth cracks? Chu Fan smiled undeniably after hearing his words. Then he slowly turned his gaze towards the Central Region. At the same time, he also instructed the Underworld in the Central Region to be more restrained, even to the point of not acting during this period. Of course, if they could make the battle more intense, the Underworld could also intervene to stir up the situation, waiting for the Great Xia Empire to truly enter and control the Central Region. As Chu Fan's message reached the Underworld in the Central Region, the Underworld began to operate. However, because the Underworld initially planned not to participate in this great war, the Underworld quickly recalled the assassins from within the Underworld. Of course, the Underworld did not recall all the assassins this time, because the Underworld still needed to gather news from the Central Region. So, those assassins who collected information, apart from those who carried out assassinations, were naturally still in the Central Region at this time. They lingered between the top forces and the Heavenly Dao Alliance, constantly gathering information about the Great War between the Heavenly Dao Alliance and the top forces. Although the Underworld had only been in the Central Region for a few years, both the Heavenly Dao Alliance and the top forces now had spies from the Underworld. Chapter 513, The Powerful Xianyuan Family. speculating on the relationship between the underworld and the holder of the human emperor's fate. When the cultivators in the central region learned that the underworld had not appeared, although they were somewhat surprised, they no longer paid attention to the underworld. Because at this moment, the great war between the top forces and the Heavenly Dao Alliance had completely unfolded. The number of quasi-emperor level experts dispatched by these top forces had already reached dozens. In an instant, the quasi-emperor level experts from these top forces were almost equal to the quasi-emperor level experts of the Heavenly Dao Alliance. What's more, there were quite a few great saint-level experts dispatched by these top forces. The total number of great saint-level experts in the entire central region instantly reached over 1,000. Therefore, the great saint-level experts on the Heavenly Dao Alliance's side instantly fell into a disadvantage. After all, the number of great saint-level experts on their side was already starting to be weaker than the combined forces of these top powers. Of course, the Tian Dao Alliance leader was also a bit puzzled after learning that the underworld had made no moves. However, after his confusion, a hint of excitement appeared on the Tian Dao Alliance leader's face. Because no matter what the underworld's plans were, as long as he could obtain the luck of the central region, he would naturally no longer fear the underworld once he grew stronger in the future. It could even be said that the underworld was now giving their Heavenly Dao Alliance an opportunity. As long as they truly grew strong, they would naturally not need to fear the underworld. However, what the Tian Dao Alliance leader didn't know was that his current actions, in the eyes of Supreme being level experts and the Xianyuan family, were like those of a clown. At this time, the reclusive Xianyuan family naturally also learned of the changes in the outside world. The Xianyuan family also held a grand meeting at this time. At this moment, the patriarch of the Xianyuan family, the Grand Elder, and even the old ancestor all appeared in the main hall. Among them, the lowest cultivation was at the Saint King level, while more were Great Saint level and 2 Quasi-Emperor level experts. I didn't expect the 7 stars alignment to appear once again, but this 7 stars alignment also signifies that the human emperor might descend in this era. A Great Saint level Grand Elder of the Xianyuan family slowly said at this time, and after speaking, his gaze leisurely looked towards the 7 stars alignment above the firmament. The Xianyuan family was naturally very clear about the 7 stars alignment because the 9 stars alignment had appeared before Xianyuan human emperor broke through to the human emperor realm. It was just that the 9 stars alignment at that time was even more terrifying than the current 7 stars alignment. Of course, this is also why the Supreme being from the Forbidden Zone felt that this 7 stars alignment was caused by the possessor of the Red Dragon Fate. Generally, the celestial phenomenon caused by a true possessor of the human emperor fate is the 9 stars alignment. Judging from the current situation, the true possessor of the human emperor fate in this era has not appeared yet, right? After all, if he participated in this great war, then the 7 stars alignment in the sky should turn into the 9 stars alignment. An old ancestor of the Xianyuan family slowly looked at the 7 stars alignment in the sky and said, and after speaking, his eyes carried a hint of nostalgia. According to news from the outside world, the one who initiated this great war is the possessor of the Red Dragon Fate. If there is no possessor of the human emperor fate, then in this era, he might become a human emperor realm expert. As soon as the old ancestor of the Xianyuan family finished speaking, another Grand Elder of the Xianyuan family also slowly spoke, and a hint of regret was in her eyes as she said this. Even if the possessor of the Red Dragon Fate breaks through to the human emperor realm, what then? Even if he breaks through to the human emperor realm, he cannot compare to our ancestor. And as soon as this Grand Elder's words fell, another Grand Elder spoke with a hint of disdain. Although the possessor of the Red Dragon Fate can indeed break through to the human emperor realm by leveraging the luck of this epic, the human emperor realm he breaks through to naturally cannot be as powerful as the human emperor realm achieved by a possessor of the human emperor fate. Moreover, what's more important is that the Xianyuan family also knows that there is a possessor of the human emperor fate in this epic. The possessor of the human emperor fate has probably already grown up by now. According to the great ancestor's deduction, this possessor of the human emperor fate has a great connection with the underworld. Perhaps the possessor of the human emperor fate is the true master of the current underworld. The old ancestor of the Xianyuan family, who had remained silent, slowly stood up and spoke, his eyes radiating a hint of brilliance as he said this. At the same time, he was also full of anticipation for the possessor of the human emperor fate. The great ancestor is an alternative path to enlightenment existence. Since he deduced a great connection between the possessor of the human emperor fate and the underworld, then perhaps there truly is a great relationship between the possessor of the human emperor fate and the underworld. The patriarch of the Xianyuan family was also very shocked after hearing the old ancestor's words, but at this moment, he instantly guessed this point. After all, their Xianyuan family's great ancestor had already reached the alternative path to enlightenment, and of course, this news was only known to their Xianyuan family. At the same time, the patriarch of the Xianyuan family also completely understood. Their Xianyuan family was naturally very familiar with the human emperor fate. So when the possessor of the human emperor fate appeared, their Xianyuan family already knew, and now the Xianyuan family also knows that the human emperor fate is becoming stronger and stronger. At that time, the Xianyuan family was still guessing who the possessor of the human emperor fate was and which force's master, but no matter how they investigated, they could not find a force where the possessor of the human emperor fate was located. However, after hearing their old ancestors' words, they instantly understood. Although there is a great upheaval in the outside world now, and even the entire central region is plunged into chaos, the underworld has not appeared. It's as if this matter has nothing to do with them. It seems the underworld already had its own plans long ago. At this time, a grand elder of the Xianyuan family also slowly stood up and said, and as he said this, he finally had an epiphany. He had been wondering why the underworld was not participating in the great war outside. Now it seems it was probably the plan of this possessor of the human emperor fate. It seems this possessor of the human emperor fate wants to be the Oriole behind the mantis stalking the cicada. Another grand elder of the Xianyuan family also stood up at this time, speaking with a hint of surprise and shock, but after he finished speaking, a look of anticipation appeared on his face. Regardless of whether he wants to be that Oriole or not, our Xianyuan family must help him grow. Only then can we unlock the secret left by our Xianyuan family's old ancestor. After hearing the words of these grand elders, the old ancestor of the Xianyuan family looked calmly at the sky, but one could see a fervent expression in the eyes of this old ancestor of the Xianyuan family. Because only the possessor of the human emperor fate can unlock the secret left by their Xianyuan human emperor ancestor, they naturally can only support the possessor of the human emperor fate of this epoch to grow stronger. Chapter 514, The Xianyuan Family's Actions. Central Region Powerhouses Gather in Azure Dragon City. Of course, to unlock the secrets left by the human emperor ancestor of the Xianyuan family, the possessor of the human emperor fate of this era must become a great emperor-level expert. Only then can the secrets left by the human emperor ancestor of the Xianyuan family be unlocked, and at the same time, the whereabouts of the great emperor-level expert of the Xianyuan family can also be revealed. The Xianyuan family is not like other families or forces where most of the great emperor-level expert have fallen. Of course, there are one or two who have joined the Forbidden Zone and become supreme being from the Forbidden Zone, but the great emperor-level expert of the Xianyuan family all disappeared in their later years. At the same time, these alternative paths to enlightenment and quasi-emperor of the Xianyuan family also know that the great emperor-level expert of the Xianyuan family left in their later years, following the human emperor ancestor of the Xianyuan family. Or it could be said that they embarked on the path of searching for the human emperor ancestor of the Xianyuan family. Therefore, only when the possessor of the human emperor fate of this era grows to the human emperor realm can this secret be unlocked. At that time, the disappearance of the great emperor-level expert of the Xianyuan family will also be completely explained. At the same time, whether the old ancestor of the Xianyuan family truly became an immortal in legends can also be completely revealed. This is also why the Xianyuan family has been waiting for the appearance of the possessor of the human emperor fate. If that's the case, then send out our Xianyuan family scouts to investigate the situation in the underworld. We can also see how far the possessor of the human emperor fate has grown. The quasi-emperor level old ancestor of the Xianyuan family, who spoke first, slowly stood up and said, since they have already guessed that the possessor of the human emperor fate of this era is related to the underworld, the Xianyuan family can directly take action against the underworld. This way, they can see the current strength and power of the possessor of the human emperor fate. If the Xianyuan family wants to invest, they naturally want to invest when the possessor of the human emperor fate is in his most difficult time. Only in this way can the Xianyuan family truly become the most favorable beneficiary of the growth of this possessor of the human emperor fate. The family head of a Xianyuan family also nodded after hearing the words of the old ancestor of the Xianyuan family. Although the Xianyuan family has not yet emerged, it is naturally easy for the Xianyuan family to inquire about news in the central region. However, the Xianyuan family, or these top forces in the central region, have forgotten the outside forces. At this time, they have all forgotten the four regions of East, West, South, and North. Of course, perhaps it is because the four regions of East, West, South, and North do not have much use in their eyes. After all, the strongest cultivator in each of the four regions of East, West, South, and North is only a great saint-level expert. Although great saint-level expert are not bad for them, each of their forces has so many great saint-level expert. Moreover, they also have quasi-emperor level expert. Therefore, they naturally look down on the four regions of East, West, South, and North. However, it is the four regions of East, West, South, and North, which they ignored, that will unify the entire central region in the future. Just as the Xianyuan family dispatched scouts to investigate the underworld and the possessor of the human emperor Fate, the real war between the Heavenly Dao Alliance and the Great Wind Empire also officially began. The location of their current battle is the Azure Dragon City of the Great Wind Empire. It is said that an Azure Dragon once fell here, so this place was named Azure Dragon City. Outside Azure Dragon City is a boundless plain, which is why Azure Dragon City is an easy-to-defend and difficult-to-attack city. After all, its outside is a boundless plain. As long as an army appears, they can clearly see the situation of the army. So it is naturally easy to see if anyone is coming to attack them. At this time, the city wall of Azure Dragon City was full of cultivator. The chi emanating from these cultivator had reached the Great Saint Realm. This is also why all the soldiers on the city wall of Azure Dragon City are invisible. Because those on the city wall are Great Saint level expert, soldiers below Saint grade are naturally rare. Most importantly, there are also many experts with extremely terrifying chi hidden in the clouds. Obviously, the owners of those terrifying chi in the clouds are Quasi-Emperor level expert. At this time, the two Great Saint level experts standing at the forefront of the city wall of Azure Dragon City are the Dean of the Celestial God Academy and the Sect Master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion. The Heavenly God Academy and the Heaven Mending Pavilion are the most top-tier forces in the entire central region. It can be said that those Holy Land are considered weaker forces in front of them, because the Heavenly God Academy once had several Great Emperor-level expert, and the Heaven Mending Pavilion also had several Great Emperor-level expert. Of course, most importantly, it is said that there are alternative path attainment expert in the Heavenly God Academy, and the Heaven Mending Pavilion is also very mysterious. There are as many as 7 Quasi-Emperor-level expert, and this is what the world knows. Therefore, with two major forces leading this great war, there's naturally no big problem. According to the speed of the Heavenly Dao Alliance, it probably won't be long before they reach Azure Dragon City. The Heavenly Dao Alliance dares to attack Azure Dragon City so openly this time. I'm afraid they have already made preparations. The Dean of the Celestial God Academy is an old man. At this time, he stroked his beard and then looked at the boundless plain in front of him with a hint of helplessness in his eyes. At this time, the boundless plain in front of him did not have any wind or grass, but instead appeared very peaceful. But beneath this calm, there was a powerful, murderous intent hidden. Even if the Heavenly Dao Alliance is prepared this time, so what? Can they really defeat the combined combat power of so many of our forces? The Sect Master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion is a middle-aged man. He exuded a strange chi, and at the same time, there was a hint of disdain on his face as he looked at the plain in front of him. Obviously, the Sect Master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion did not put the Heavenly Dao Alliance in his eyes. After all, so many of their forces are united this time. The number of Great Saint-level expert alone far exceeds that of the Heavenly Dao Alliance, so they naturally do not worry about the Heavenly Dao Alliance. And the Great Saint-level expert behind him also nodded after hearing the words of the Sect Master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion. Obviously, they also felt that they would win this great war. However, the Dean of the Celestial God Academy frowned after hearing the words of the Sect Master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion. Although he also believed that they could defeat the Heavenly Dao Alliance, they must not take the Heavenly Dao Alliance lightly no matter what. After all, if the Heavenly Dao Alliance dares to openly attack the Great Wind Empire, then they naturally have their own confidence. Of course, at this time, it was not just the Dean of the Celestial God Academy who was worried. There were also some top experts in other forces whose eyes also... Chapter 515, The Arrogance of the Heaven Mending Pavilion, The Arrival of the Heavenly Dao Alliance. After the Sect Master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion glanced at the Dean of the Celestial God Academy again, he slowly turned his gaze towards the Holy Lord of the Tianxian Holy Land. Then, with a playful look in his eyes, he spoke to the Holy Lord of the Tianxian Holy Land. I heard that the Tianxian Holy Land was oppressed by the underworld some time ago, and even had to bow its head in the end. Is the underworld really that powerful? After speaking, the Sect Master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion still had a playful and mocking look in his eyes as he looked at the Great Saint-level existences from the Tianxian Holy Land. Many Great Saint-level experts, upon hearing the words of the Sect Master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion, immediately turned their gaze towards the people of the Tianxian Holy Land. After all, they were aware of this matter, and most importantly, the Tianxian Holy Land ultimately chose to reconcile with the underworld. One must know that if such a situation had happened to them, they would absolutely not have chosen such a solution. After all, doing so would plunge the entire faction into turmoil. At the same time, it would also cause everyone to thoroughly mock their faction. The Holy Lord of the Tianqian Holy Land, upon hearing the words of the sect master of the heaven-mending pavilion, his expression instantly turned grim. Although this matter had passed a long time ago for their Tianqian Holy Land, it had always been a stain. After all, such an incident would be considered a stain for any top-tier faction. If the heaven-mending pavilion is so formidable, why doesn't the heaven-mending pavilion go and see how strong the underworld truly is? Subsequently, the Holy Lord of the Tianqian Holy Land also took a deep breath and then slowly spoke to the sect master of the heaven-mending pavilion. As he said this, there was a hint of mockery in his eyes. Although the heaven-mending pavilion was indeed the top-tier faction in the central region, even the Tianqian Holy Land couldn't compare to the heaven-mending pavilion. However, their Tianqian Holy Land was not afraid of the heaven-mending pavilion. After all, they possessed an ultimate emperor weapon. So why should they fear the heaven-mending pavilion? Would the heaven-mending pavilion really start an emperor war with the Tianqian Holy Land just because of his words? The sect master of the heaven-mending pavilion, upon hearing the words of the Holy Lord of the Tianqian Holy Land, his expression instantly became unsightly. He had originally intended to mock the Tianqian Holy Land, but he hadn't expected that the Holy Lord of the Tianqian Holy Land would end up mocking him. The others, upon hearing the words of the Holy Lord of the Tianqian Holy Land, also looked at the sect master of the heaven-mending pavilion with interest. After all, they naturally knew the news that the underworld had dispatched an existence who had achieved the alternative path to enlightenment. So they also wanted to see what the sect master of the heaven-mending pavilion would say about this existence from the underworld who had achieved the alternative path to enlightenment. Even if my heaven-mending pavilion is not as capable, it is impossible for us to directly surrender like some factions. At this moment, the sect master of the heaven-mending pavilion also let out a cold snort. Then he flicked his sleeves and spoke. After saying this, there was a hint of disdain in his eyes as he looked at the Holy Lord of the Tianqian Holy Land. So, you're saying there's an existence who has achieved the alternative path to enlightenment in your heaven-mending pavilion? Then why didn't any such existence appear in the heaven-mending pavilion during previous great battles? Is the heaven-mending pavilion unwilling to send out an existence who has achieved the alternative path to enlightenment? The Holy Lord of the Tianqian Holy Land, upon hearing the words of the sect master of the heaven-mending pavilion, did not choose to show mercy. Instead, he continued to speak to the sect master of the heaven-mending pavilion. After speaking, there was an unspoken hint of mockery in his eyes. The great saint-level experts present, upon hearing the words of the Holy Lord of the Tianqian Holy Land, all turned their gazes towards the sect master of the heaven-mending pavilion. They also wanted to see how the sect master of the heaven-mending pavilion intended to refute it. My heaven-mending pavilion indeed does not have an existence who has achieved the alternative path to enlightenment. But if anyone dares to insult my heaven-mending pavilion in such a way, then even if we self-destruct our emperor weapon, we will slay all invading enemies. An elder beside the sect master of the heaven-mending pavilion also stepped forward and spoke. The chi on his body had already reached the great saint realm. After he finished speaking, there was a hint of determination in his eyes. Clearly, their heaven-mending pavilion would not be threatened. At the same time, the meaning implied in his words was also very simple. That is, he was mocking the Tianqian Holy Land for not daring to self-destruct their emperor weapon. The Holy Lords, or emperors from other factions, all frowned upon hearing his words. In their opinion, there was no need to self-destruct an emperor weapon in a battle against the underworld. After all, why choose to start an emperor war for a battle that can be easily resolved? Even the people of the Heavenly God Academy looked at the people of the heaven-mending pavilion with helplessness at this moment. Of course, many people at this time had no intention of interfering, as the current situation held no disadvantages for them. Just as the Grand Elder of the heaven-mending pavilion was about to continue speaking, a terrifying horn sound suddenly came from the horizon. Then, one horn sound after another slowly drifted from the horizon. As these horn sounds slowly came from the horizon, some black dots appeared in the vast plain ahead. These black dots were slowly moving towards Azure Dragon City. Soon, these black dots, like a black line, swept across the plain towards Azure Dragon City. And even more terrifying was that the chi emanating from these black dots shocked everyone in Azure Dragon City. "They're here." The Dean of the Celestial God Academy looked at this black line and spoke with a solemn expression. Upon hearing his words, everyone then slowly turned their gaze towards the black line above. Many people had a solemn look in their eyes, although they had initially underestimated the Heavenly Dao Alliance. At this moment, they had no choice but to treat the Heavenly Dao Alliance with solemnity. After all, the Heavenly Dao Alliance was a top-tier faction no matter how you looked at it. And more importantly, the Heavenly Dao Alliance dared to directly attack the Great Wind Empire. They even dared to attack this place directly despite their combined forces. That also meant that the Heavenly Dao Alliance was not as simple as they imagined. As everyone held their breath and watched the black line ahead, a loud bang was heard from behind the black line. Then, a huge war chariot was seen slowly flying over the black line. The war chariot was pulled by 4 huge black fierce tigers, appearing extremely terrifying. Behind the war chariot was a black palace. This black palace continuously moved forward, following the war chariot. At the same time, this black line also slowly appeared before everyone. At this moment, everyone finally saw clearly that this black line was composed of numerous soldiers wearing black armor. These soldiers marched in perfect formation. With every step, the entire world seemed to tremble. Behind this row of soldiers in black armor was a row of soldiers in silver armor. Behind them were soldiers in fiery red armor and soldiers in emerald green armor, as if all the 5 elements colors of armor were gathered. Chapter 5:16 Speculation on Top Powers. The relationship between the underworld and the Heavenly Alliance? As this group of soldiers continuously advanced, the aura emanating from them completely affected the entire land. At the same time, the land was also constantly battling due to their advance. Just a fleeting glance was enough to tell that the number of this army had already exceeded 10 million. That is to say, the Heavenly Dao Alliance had mobilized an army of over 10 million this time. Such a number of troops could already sweep through many imperial dynasties. After all, the total number of troops in the imperial dynasties of the central region was only a few million, with the most reaching the 10 million level. Now, the army mobilized by the Heavenly Dao Alliance this time had already reached the 10 million level. It would naturally be easy for them to sweep through an imperial dynasty. Of course, if it were an empire, then the number of troops would at least reach tens of millions or even hundreds of millions. That is to say, in an empire, ordinary soldiers truly counted for nothing. Even an elite army could wipe out these ordinary soldiers. Moreover, even more so, quasi-emperor level experts could easily slaughter 1 million troops. Therefore, an army is nothing in front of top experts. As this army slowly advanced, the various experts above Azure Dragon City also saw the Heavenly Dao Alliance experts in the center of the army. At the very center of this army was a moving castle, and around the castle stood many experts radiating terrifying auras. The number of these experts had reached several hundred. Clearly, these are the great saint-level experts mobilized by the Heavenly Dao Alliance this time. And on the periphery of this group of great saint-level experts were a group of Saint King-level experts, their number reaching over 10,000. Seeing such a formation instantly shocked the people above Azure Dragon City. After all, even their own factions could not produce so many experts. Even the current Heavenly God Academy and Heaven Mending Pavilion had expressions of disbelief, because they were known as the 2 most top expert factions in the central region, yet the number of experts they could produce could not possibly be as many as those mobilized by the Heavenly Dao Alliance this time. Most importantly, the aura emanating from the old man sitting atop this castle made it impossible for everyone present to fathom. Even the quasi-emperor level experts in the clouds looked at this old man with shock. At the same time, the eyes of these quasi-emperor level experts instantly filled with solemnity, because they also felt that this old man's aura was in no way weaker than theirs. They even felt as if they were being targeted by a fierce tiger. Is this the strength of the Heavenly Dao Alliance? It seems they are not as simple as we imagined. The sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion slowly looked at the continuously advancing army and spoke leisurely, after which his eyes still held a hint of solemnity and surprise. The Heavenly Dao Alliance is naturally not that simple. After all, neither of our 2 major factions can ascertain their true strength, so how could they be simple? The Dean of the Celestial God Academy slowly stood up and said, and as he spoke, he leisurely cast his gaze towards the army below. The Heavenly Dao Alliance had not appeared for long, but its strength far exceeded the imagination of ordinary people, because the Heavenly Dao Alliance could easily crush a Holy Land-level existence, but only because they lacked the Great Emperor-level foundation. Therefore, the Heavenly Dao Alliance had not chosen to act. But now, the Heavenly Dao Alliance's action made people feel somewhat incredible, and at the same time, everyone began to speculate about the Heavenly Dao Alliance. In that case, are the Underworld and the Heavenly Dao Alliance not very similar? At this moment, a great saint-level expert suddenly spoke, and after he finished, his eyes still held a hint of shock, because both the Underworld and the Heavenly Dao Alliance were factions that had only recently appeared. Although the Underworld had only existed for a few years, its growth rate was in no way weaker than that of the former Heavenly Dao Alliance. It could even be said that with the Underworld's current growth rate, it might soon surpass the Heavenly Dao Alliance. Moreover, and more importantly, there were true alternative paths to enlightenment existences within the underworld. Therefore, the strength of the underworld would naturally not be weaker than that of ordinary factions. Perhaps there really is some connection between the underworld and the Heavenly Dao Alliance. After all, this time, when the Heavenly Dao Alliance made a move, the underworld also chose not to act. They seem to have completely disappeared. The Wang family head also slowly stood up and spoke at this moment. And after he finished, his eyes still held a hint of shock, as if he had discovered something extraordinary. Indeed, if that's truly the case, then perhaps the relationship between the underworld and the Heavenly Dao Alliance is not as simple as imagined. After all, we also don't know the faces of those top experts in the underworld. Even if they mixed into the Heavenly Dao Alliance's army, it would be impossible for us to discover them. At this moment, another family head of a top expert faction in the central region also stood up and spoke, and as he spoke, his eyes held complete confidence. Clearly, his guess was similar to the Wang family head's guess. We cannot determine the faces of the top experts who appeared in the underworld, but we can truly determine the appearance of those masters of the sword in the underworld. And this time, there are no such masters from the underworld in the Heavenly Dao Alliance. Just as the family head's words fell, another great saint-level expert looked at the Heavenly Dao Alliance experts below and shook his head, saying, although this great saint-level expert initially agreed with their speculation, he had truly seen the appearance of the underworld's masters, and now there were no such appearances of the underworld's masters in the Heavenly Dao Alliance. So he denied the guesses of the two family heads. That's right. Our factions all have the appearances of the underworld's true top experts, and now among these top experts of the Heavenly Dao Alliance, there are no top experts from the underworld, so there should be no connection or cooperation between the underworld and the Heavenly Dao Alliance. Perhaps this is just the speculation of the two family heads. After all, the underworld also needs to stabilize right now, and it's normal for them not to act. Who stipulated that the underworld must help us? Only when the underworld's true masters appear can we be certain. We cannot inexplicably add another hostile force now. If the underworld truly helps the Heavenly Dao Alliance, we will be in some difficulty. Other great saint-level experts also spoke one after another after hearing the words of this great saint. Of course, at this time they were refuting the Wang family head and the family head of that top expert faction. Although they had not seen many of the underworld assassins, they could still feel the aura on the underworld assassins. What's more, the faces of the true top experts in the underworld had never been concealed, and there were no true experts from the underworld below. So they naturally did not suspect the underworld. Chapter 517, The Clash begins. The mocked leader of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion. Of course, for every group that doesn't doubt the underworld, there's a group that does. At this moment, another group of great saint-level experts wondered if there was some connection between the underworld and the Heavenly Dao Alliance. After all, the underworld and the Heavenly Dao Alliance appeared around the same time. Moreover, the underworld and the Heavenly Dao Alliance had never truly clashed. While this doesn't necessarily mean anything, it also shows that there is no past enmity between the underworld and the Heavenly Dao Alliance, leading some to speculate about a connection between them. Although the top experts of the underworld haven't appeared in the Heavenly Dao Alliance's ranks, we don't know all of the underworld's experts. So who knows if there are any underworld experts participating here. Indeed, whether they are experts from the Heavenly Dao Alliance or the underworld, we cannot ascertain. So who knows what the true relationship between the Heavenly Dao Alliance and the underworld is? Regardless, we cannot judge the relationship between the Heavenly Dao Alliance and the underworld based on our own assumptions, and there hasn't been a major battle between the underworld and the Heavenly Dao Alliance yet. Yes, if there really is no connection between the underworld and the Heavenly Dao Alliance, then why doesn't the underworld attack the Heavenly Dao Alliance? Why don't they come to help us? Perhaps there really is some connection between the underworld and the Heavenly Dao Alliance. This group of great saint-level experts who believed there was a connection between the Heavenly Dao Alliance and the underworld also began to discuss, their gazes occasionally sweeping over the great saint-level Heavenly Dao Alliance experts below. Of course, some also felt their conjectures were incorrect. However, at this time, regarding the conjectures of these two groups, neither the Dean of the Celestial God Academy nor the Sectmaster of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion spoke. This was because their gazes were all fixed on the Heavenly Dao Alliance army below. At this moment, these Heavenly Dao Alliance armies were still constantly approaching their direction. Moreover, the chi emanating from these Heavenly Dao Alliance armies far exceeded that of ordinary people. At the same time, the Tiandao Alliance leader in the palace was clad in a crimson battle armor, his eyes filled with confidence as he looked at the crowd on the Azure Dragon City wall. In his hand, he also held an immortal sword. This immortal sword was also crimson, looking incredibly dazzling. Of course, beside this Tiandao Alliance leader, there were also several elders whose chi had reached a terrifying level. Their eyes gazed at the Azure Dragon City before them without a ripple. It was as if resolving the Azure Dragon City before them was incredibly easy. As the army continuously advanced, they quickly appeared outside Azure Dragon City. At this moment, the Heavenly Dao Alliance army outside finally stopped. The Tiandao Alliance leader slowly stepped forward, his eyes filled with confidence and pride as he looked at the crowd on the city wall. I didn't expect to see you all here today, but are you all planning to stop the advance of my Heavenly Dao Alliance? He then spoke clearly to the crowd before him, his gaze calm afterwards, as if he didn't put the people before him in his eyes. Of course, at this moment, the Tiandao Alliance leader was also continuously surveying the crowd on the Azure Dragon City wall. When he didn't see anyone from the underworld, the expression on his face relaxed. It could be said that besides the Xianyuan family, the Heavenly Dao Alliance feared only the underworld. Since the Xianyuan family had no intention of emerging, the Heavenly Dao Alliance naturally didn't need to fear them. Moreover, the Tiandao Alliance leader felt that since he possessed the Red Dragon Fate, the Xianyuan family shouldn't stop him. So the Tiandao Alliance leader was naturally not worried. What he was worried about now was the mysterious and unpredictable underworld. Now, seeing that the underworld had not appeared, he naturally breathed a sigh of relief. As the Tiandao Alliance leader's words fell, the sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion also slowly stepped out from the city wall. Then, with a hint of jealousy in his eyes, he looked at the Tiandao Alliance leader below. Today, your Heavenly Dao Alliance can only remain here, or rather, if the Heavenly Dao Alliance surrenders to us now, we might spare your lives. Otherwise, today will be the day the Heavenly Dao Alliance is annihilated. The sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion's voice was full of menace, and at the same time, the sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion's eyes held a confident expression. It was as if he believed that they could easily capture all the combat power of the Heavenly Dao Alliance before them. It could even be said that they could easily annihilate the Heavenly Dao Alliance before them. Upon hearing the words of the sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion, the experts from the top powers beside him also turned their gazes towards the Tiandao Alliance leader below. At the same time, they also shared a common thought in their hearts. Ha! You must be the sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion, right? I didn't expect you to be so naive. Do you really think our Heaven Mending Pavilion would attack the Great Wind Empire without preparation? Upon hearing the words of the sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion, the Tiandao Alliance leader also showed a long-lost smile. Then he calmly looked at the sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion and spoke leisurely. After speaking, he calmly turned his gaze towards the sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion. If their Heavenly Dao Alliance truly lacked strength, how could they directly attack the entire central domain? Therefore, the words of the sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion now seemed a bit laughable to him. Do you think a mere power that has only grown for 10,000 years can be compared with us? Upon hearing the words of the Tiandao Alliance leader, a flicker of anger instantly appeared in the sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion's eyes. Then, he immediately stepped forward and spoke to the Tiandao Alliance leader. After speaking, his eyes still held a trace of anger, and then he stood high above on the city wall, looking down at the Tiandao Alliance leader below. Since our sect master is so confident, why not come and test whether my Heavenly Dao Alliance truly has the strength? At this moment, the Tiandao Alliance leader naturally had no intention of wasting words with the sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion, so he calmly looked at the sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion before him and spoke. After speaking, he leisurely turned his gaze towards the Dean of the Celestial God Academy. No matter what, the Dean of the Celestial God Academy was also the master of two top powers. At the same time, the chi emanating from the Dean of the Celestial God Academy was also very terrifying. Therefore, the Tiandao Alliance leader now turned his gaze towards this Dean. Fellow Taoist, how can you be persuaded to retreat? When the Dean of the Celestial God Academy saw the Tiandao Alliance leader looking at him, he also slowly looked at the Tiandao Alliance leader and spoke. After speaking, his eyes earnestly stared at the Tiandao Alliance leader. It was as if he was waiting for the Tiandao Alliance leader's reply. Chapter 518, The Vermilion Bird Destiny of the Heaven Mending Pavilion, the formation outside Azure Dragon City. After hearing the words of the Dean of the Celestial God Academy, the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance instantly broke into a wild laugh. Ha! His unrestrained laughter then echoed throughout Azure Dragon City. After laughing for a moment, he slowly turned his gaze towards the Dean of the Celestial God Academy, speaking with a mix of confidence and arrogance. If my Heavenly Dao Alliance were to retreat now, then why would we have launched this great war? Was it merely to see all of you? At this point, the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance looked at the people of the Heavenly God Academy with an exaggerated expression. At the same time, the terrifying aura from his body completely erupted. The crimson chi on his body instantly enveloped him. Above his head, a colossal crimson dragon continuously circled. This crimson dragon seemed as if it wanted to pierce through the clouds and appear in the sky. Seeing this, the Dean of the Celestial God Academy's eyes instantly showed a hint of solemnity, and he immediately looked up at the blood-red dragon in the sky. This blood-red dragon also instantly turned its two eyes, as large as planets, towards Azure Dragon City. This forced the entire Azure Dragon City to look up at the red dragon in the sky. The possessor of a red dragon fate. So that's it. You are the possessor of the red dragon fate of this era. Then, the Dean of the Celestial God Academy looked at the red dragon in the sky with a hint of confusion and spoke. At the same time, he finally understood why the Heavenly Dao Alliance wanted to attack the entire Central Domain. The Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance, possessing a red dragon fate, naturally hoped that this luck could elevate his cultivation. He could also use this luck to break through to the Human Emperor realm, or even if he couldn't break through to the Human Emperor realm, he could still break through to the Great Emperor realm. After all, the possessor of a red dragon fate can break through with this luck. This is the advantage of possessing a top-tier fate. As this red dragon flew into the sky, the 7 stars alignment also completely turned crimson. This caused the entire sky to become crimson, as if an evil star was at work. Seeing this, the sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion and a group of top experts looked at the red dragon in the sky with complex expressions, because they all understood that they now had only 2 choices. Either they completely defeat the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance in front of them, which is the only way to suppress his red dragon fate, or they completely surrender to the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance. In that case, they might gain some opportunity by following the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance in the future. But as masters of top-tier powers, how could they surrender so easily to the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance before them? Although you are the possessor of a red dragon fate, do you think that after your red dragon fate appears, other fates will remain hidden? The sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion slowly stepped forward, looking at the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance before him and speaking. After he finished, his eyes held a hint of pride. Then, he instantly threw a golden token into the sky. Instantly, a golden vermilion bird flew out from the token. Then, this vermilion bird roared towards the sky. Without any surprise, this vermilion bird began to confront the red dragon. The possessor of a vermilion bird fate, I didn't expect to meet the possessor of a vermilion bird fate before the Great War even began. Since your Heaven Mending Pavilion has a possessor of a vermilion bird fate, why not let her come out and meet me? The Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance was also somewhat surprised to see this. Then, he slowly looked up at the sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion and spoke. As he spoke, his eyes held a hint of anticipation. Although the possessor of a vermilion bird fate is considered a top-tier fate, it is still somewhat difficult for a vermilion bird fate to successfully defeat a red dragon fate. Of course, this does not mean that a vermilion bird fate is weaker than a red dragon fate, but rather because the possessor of a vermilion bird fate represents the entire Heaven Mending Pavilion. And he, the possessor of a red dragon fate, represents the entire Heavenly Dao Alliance. According to the current situation, the strength of the Heavenly Dao Alliance has surpassed that of the Heaven Mending Pavilion. So the possessor of this vermilion bird fate is naturally weaker than the possessor of this red dragon fate. My Heaven Mending Pavilion does not have the same ambition as the Heavenly Dao Alliance. The possessor of the vermilion bird fate in our Heaven Mending Pavilion only hopes to reach the Great Emperor realm through her own cultivation. Upon hearing the words of the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance, the sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion showed a hint of mockery. Then he slowly looked at the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance and spoke. After he finished, the disdain in his eyes was completely unleashed. If one possesses a vermilion bird fate and doesn't dare to contend for this world, then how can she ever grow in the future? The Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance directly ignored the disdain of the sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion. He looked at the sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion with a hint of pity and spoke. Although possessing these top-tier fates allows them to automatically cultivate to the Great Emperor realm, this also requires them to have supreme opportunity and true talent. Talent is already sufficient for them, but true opportunity is indeed hard to come by. This is also why the possessor of the Red Dragon Fate chose to unify the entire world. Because the simplest way is to use the luck of this world to help him achieve the Human Emperor realm. And even if this luck cannot help him achieve the Human Emperor realm, he can still achieve the Great Emperor realm. This is also why he chose to directly launch an attack on the entire central domain. No matter what, you will not be able to break through Azure Dragon City today. The sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion was also somewhat angered upon hearing the words of the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance. But at this moment, he calmly looked at the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance below and spoke. After he finished, a terrifying silver-white light emanated from his body. This terrifying silver-white light instantly began to spread from him. The next second, outside Azure Dragon City, colorful lights also began to emanate. These colorful lights quickly formed an invisible barrier, directly intercepting the Heavenly Dao Alliance's army outside, preventing the Heavenly Dao Alliance's army from advancing another step. Between Azure Dragon City and the Heavenly Dao Alliance, there was a colorful barrier separating them. Seeing this, the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance was also somewhat surprised. He had not expected the Heaven Mending Pavilion to be prepared so early. However, at this moment, the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance did not show much shock. Instead, he leisurely turned his gaze towards an old man beside him. Chapter 519 Quasi-Emperors Go to the Extraterrestrial War. The Heaven-Mending Stones of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion unleashed their power. The elder calmly and slowly walked out from the direction of the palace. Then, invisible steps appeared one after another beneath his feet, causing him to slowly walk towards Azure Dragon City. Subsequently, he also cast his gaze towards the multicolored barrier outside Azure Dragon City. With a hint of surprise in his eyes, he looked at the sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion inside the barrier. I didn't expect the Heaven Mending Pavilion to still have such a thing, but it might be difficult to stop us with just this, no? Then, he raised his head, looked up at the sky, and spoke leisurely. After speaking, his gaze once again fell upon the multicolored barrier in front of him. Our Heaven Mending Pavilion has never thought of keeping you out. After all, without truly resolving the Heavenly Dao Alliance, our Heaven Mending Pavilion naturally won't give up so easily. Just where the elder had looked, an aged voice now came, and then an elder slowly walked out from where the aged voice originated. The elder held a terrifying lightning pool in his hand, from which lightning continuously erupted, appearing extremely frightening. At the same time, several other elders also slowly emerged from other directions. In their hands, they also held many terrifying-looking weapons. Instantly, dozens of elders appeared in the sky. The aura emanating from these elders had already far surpassed the Great Saint Realm. I didn't expect so many Quasi-Emperor level existences to appear this time just to deal with our Heavenly Dao Alliance. But do you think you can withstand the Heavenly Dao Alliance's attack with just yourselves? The elder who was studying the multicolored barrier in front of him showed no particular expression on his face upon seeing these Quasi-Emperor level experts emerging in the sky. Instead, he calmly looked at these Quasi-Emperor level experts and spoke. As his voice fell, more and more Quasi-Emperor level experts from the Heavenly Dao Alliance side began to appear. Then, one Quasi-Emperor after another walked out from the palaces of the Heavenly Dao Alliance. Their eyes also held a calm gaze as they looked at the Quasi-Emperor realm experts in the sky. An all-out battle among existences like us here would likely destroy half of the Great Wind Empire. So let's fight outside the domain. Seeing this scene, a Quasi-Emperor from the Heaven Mending Pavilion naturally knew that they couldn't fight here now. So, with a calm look in his eyes, he spoke to the Quasi-Emperor of the Heavenly Dao Alliance. After speaking, he transformed into a streak of light and disappeared outside Azure Dragon City. At the same time, the Quasi-Emperor level experts around him also transformed into streaks of light and vanished. Upon seeing this, the Quasi-Emperor level experts of the Heavenly Dao Alliance naturally did not hesitate either. They quickly disappeared from the location. Clearly, they also chose to fight outside the domain. After all, if the Heavenly Dao Alliance wanted to absorb the luck of the entire central domain, they naturally couldn't destroy the entire central domain, otherwise they would have to expend effort to restore it. After these Quasi-Emperor level experts disappeared, the Quasi-Emperor level expert who had just appeared from the Heavenly Dao Alliance side once again took a deep look at the multicolored barrier in front of him, then also transformed into a streak of light and vanished from his spot. With the complete disappearance of these Quasi-Emperor level experts, the oppressive atmosphere on the scene finally eased. At the same time, the highest cultivation realm present was only at the Great Sage Perfection Realm. The Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance gazed leisurely into the sky, then slowly turned his gaze back to Azure Dragon City in front of him. Since the battles of Quasi-Emperor level experts have all moved outside the domain, then our battle should also begin. After speaking, the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance waved his hand at the Great Saint level experts of the Heavenly Dao Alliance behind him. Then, these Great Saint level experts flew towards Azure Dragon City. At this moment, they seemed to disregard the multicolored barrier in front of Azure Dragon City. As these great saint-level experts arrived in front of the multicolored barrier, the barrier instantly transformed into streaks of multicolored light, enveloping all of them. Seeing this scene, the sect master of the heaven-mending pavilion also revealed a smile. Then, he nodded to the surrounding great saint-level experts. The great saint-level experts from the surrounding forces also transformed into streaks of light and disappeared into the multicolored barrier. Instantly, the great saint-level experts on the entire battlefield once again vanished. This meant that from the beginning until now, Quasi-Emperor and great saint-level experts were no longer participating in this true battle. They had their own battlefield. So that's how it is. This is your heaven-mending pavilion's heaven-mending stone, which can absorb all things into it. Now, all these great saint-level experts are battling within the heaven-mending stone, truly worthy of being the heaven-mending pavilion. Upon seeing this, the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance instantly reacted, but he looked at the Sect Master of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion with a fervent gaze and spoke. The formation that the Sect Master of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion had just set up should be supported by the Heaven-Mending Stone, and then all these vanished great saint-level experts entered the Heaven-Mending Stone. At the same time, the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance also knew the origin of the Heaven-Mending Stone, and more importantly, how crucial the Heaven-Mending Stone was to the entire world. It could even be said that the Heaven-Mending Stone had far surpassed an ordinary Ultimate Emperor weapon. One could even say that a tiny bit of the Heaven-Mending Stone could be used to refine an Ultimate Emperor weapon. Moreover, the Heaven-Mending Stone could also completely transform Quasi-Emperor weapons into Ultimate Emperor weapons. Of course, the Heaven-Mending Stone would need at least tens of thousands of years to refine a Quasi-Emperor weapon into an Ultimate Emperor weapon. And the Ultimate Emperor weapon had not been truly refined by a great Emperor-level speaker. So the strength of an Ultimate Emperor weapon advanced by the Heaven-Mending Stone would naturally not be as powerful as a true Ultimate Emperor weapon. But even so, it was still extremely abnormal. After all, in this world, there are not many true Ultimate Emperor weapons. It could even be said that only top-tier forces would possess one or two of them. As for how many the Heaven-Mending Pavilion possessed, that remained a mystery. Therefore, the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance naturally hoped to obtain the Heaven-Mending Stone, which was why his eyes now held a fervent glow. Indeed, this is the effect of the Heaven-Mending Stone. But now, do you still think you have a chance of victory? The Sect Master of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion naturally admitted it without any hesitation, then slowly turned his gaze back to the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance. He naturally knew how important the Heaven-Mending Stone was, but the Sect Master of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion also knew that apart from their Heaven-Mending Pavilion, no other force could utilize the Heaven-Mending Stone. They didn't even know the true appearance of the Heaven-Mending Stone. Chapter 5:20 A terrifying battle unfolds, a clash between dragons and phoenixes. At this moment, the excitement on the face of the Heavenly Dao Alliance's Alliance Master was uncontrollable, and then he looked at the Heaven-Mending Stone with a fiery gaze and slowly said, "He will be mine sooner or later." After the Heavenly Dao Alliance's Alliance Master finished speaking, he no longer paid attention to the Sect Master of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion, but instead slowly turned his gaze towards the army behind him. Then he waved his hand toward the sky. The next second, the black armored army behind him directly launched an attack on Azure Dragon City. This black armored army's warhorses were covered in black scales, looking incredibly terrifying. At the same time, a terrifying black chi emanated from this black armored army, and this terrifying black chi instantly darkened the entire world. The next second, this black armored army appeared outside the city walls of Azure Dragon City without any hesitation. Then, this black armored army threw the long spears in their hands. Immediately, many long spears appeared in the sky, these black long spears streaking across the sky like arrows. Then, they densely stabbed towards Azure Dragon City. Seeing this scene, the Sect Master of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion on Azure Dragon City also showed a calm expression in his eyes. Then he waved his hand at an army behind him. The next second, the army behind the Sect Master of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion instantly stepped forward. They immediately injected the power within their bodies into the Heaven-Mending Stone in front of them. The next second, a colorful light instantly appeared in the entire sky. These colorful lights quickly enveloped the entire Azure Dragon City. At the same time, a colorful barrier also appeared in the sky. Then it directly blocked all of these black long spears. These black long spears didn't even create a ripple on this barrier, directly falling onto the ground outside Azure Dragon City. Seeing this scene, the Heavenly Dao Alliance's Alliance Master also showed a hint of surprise in his eyes. However, at this time, he did not choose to speak, but instead calmly watched this scene. Then, these black armored generals also quickly flew into the sky. Their current strength was already enough to fly into the sky. Then, the chi from these black armored generals instantly emanated. At the same time, the long spears that had fallen to the ground reappeared in their hands. The next second, this black armored army continuously charged towards the barrier ahead. Then, the chi from this black armored army began to slowly gather together. A black dragon instantly appeared from above this black armored army. Then, without any surprise, it directly charged towards Azure Dragon City. The soldiers on Azure Dragon City's side also quickly injected their power into the Heaven Mending Stone again upon seeing this scene. At this moment, the sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion calmly formed hand seals, and the next second, a phoenix appeared from within the Heaven Mending Stone. This phoenix glowed with colorful light, looking like a true phoenix from a mythical world. Then, the phoenix, without any mercy, directly charged towards the black dragon in the sky. The next second, the phoenix also spat out a huge fireball from its mouth. This huge fireball directly shattered the black dragon in the sky, making this black dragon instantly disappear between heaven and earth. And this colorful phoenix also flew into the sky again at this time. The moment its wings flapped, this black armored army fell from the sky. At the same time, the terrifying power also made this black armored army unable to stand in the sky. They fell from the sky like black raindrops. Then they directly fell to the ground. Hundreds of thousands of black armored troops were instantly completely dealt with by this colorful phoenix. And the phoenix, having dealt with this army, clearly had no intention of stopping at this moment. This phoenix emanated a terrifying chi, flapping its wings and flying towards the Heavenly Dao Alliance's army. Seeing this scene, a golden light also appeared in the hand of the Heavenly Dao Alliance's Alliance Master. As this golden light slowly ascended, the golden army in front of him also instantly emerged. The golden light from this golden army instantly enveloped the entire sky. Then, a golden giant tiger slowly emerged from these golden lights. The character king on its forehead was particularly conspicuous. At the same time, this golden giant tiger also let out a roar as it looked at the colorful phoenix in the sky. The next second, the golden giant tiger and the colorful phoenix collided. The moment of impact, the entire sky was instantly dyed golden and colorful, as if there were only these two colors between heaven and earth. And these two colors were constantly merging. Then, a terrifying fluctuation instantly appeared in the sky. The two colors also instantly disappeared between heaven and earth. And as these two colors disappeared between heaven and earth, the Heavenly Dao Alliance's golden army also charged towards Azure Dragon City without any mercy. They were like heavenly gods descending to the mortal world. And as this army charged towards Azure Dragon City, an army clad in silver armor on Azure Dragon City's side also leaped directly from the city wall. At the same time, they also held weapons and charged towards this golden army. The next second, the two armies collided in the sky. The chi emanating from both armies had already reached a very terrifying level. And more importantly, the strength displayed by both armies at this time far exceeded that of ordinary armies. At this moment, the leading Saint King level expert also began to fight fiercely. Instantly, a scene like purgatory appeared outside the entire Azure Dragon City. Golden or silver warriors continuously fell. In just a moment, tens of thousands of people fell. Such a battle could be called an epic battle. And just as the battle on Azure Dragon City's side unfolded, the battle on the Outer Domain side was even more fierce at this time, because the battles on the Outer Domain side were between Quasi-Emperor level experts. Therefore, every one of them had reached the Quasi-Emperor realm. The strongest on the Heavenly Dao Alliance's side was a peak Quasi-Emperor realm expert, and his strength even surpassed that of ordinary cultivators at the peak Quasi-Emperor realm. He looked at the peak Quasi-Emperor realm expert in front of him with a fierce gaze. The peak Quasi-Emperor realm expert in front of him was precisely the peak Quasi-Emperor realm expert of the Heaven Mending Pavilion. And this peak Quasi-Emperor realm expert of the Heaven Mending Pavilion also held a long spear in his hand. Most importantly, the pressure emanating from this long spear had already reached the level of an ultimate emperor weapon. Chapter 5:21 The Five Elements Formation of the Heavenly Dao Alliance. The Power of the Heaven Mending Stone. At the same time, the peak Quasi-Emperor realm expert from Heaven Mending Pavilion also had a hint of pride in his eyes. Although there wasn't a significant gap between his strength and that of the peak Quasi-Emperor realm expert from Heavenly Dao Alliance, with the ultimate emperor weapon in his hand, he could suppress the peak Quasi-Emperor realm expert from Heavenly Dao Alliance before him. An ultimate emperor weapon? It seems Heaven Mending Pavilion truly has many ultimate emperor weapons. Is this the rumored power of the Heaven Mending Stone? The peak Quasi-Emperor Realm expert from Heavenly Dao Alliance looked at the ultimate Emperor weapon in the hand of the peak Quasi-Emperor Realm expert from Heaven Mending Pavilion, a hint of envy in his eyes. However, at this moment, he showed no fear, as if he wasn't afraid of the Heaven Mending Pavilion expert before him. Of course, he didn't disregard the ultimate Emperor weapon in the hand of the peak Quasi-Emperor Realm expert from Heaven Mending Pavilion. Your strength and mine are already quite similar. Now that I have the ultimate Emperor weapon to boost me, how can you be my opponent? The peak Quasi-Emperor Realm expert from Heaven Mending Pavilion showed a mocking expression on his face after seeing the peak Quasi-Emperor Realm expert from Heavenly Dao Alliance. After speaking, he looked at the peak Quasi-Emperor Realm expert from Heavenly Dao Alliance with an air of triumph. Although I don't have an ultimate Emperor weapon, do you think having one can suppress a Quasi-Emperor Realm expert of my Heavenly Dao Alliance? And can you truly unleash the ultimate power of this ultimate Emperor weapon right now? The peak Quasi-Emperor Realm expert from Heavenly Dao Alliance slowly spoke to the peak Quasi-Emperor Realm expert from Heaven Mending Pavilion opposite him. After he finished speaking, his eyes held a hint of determination. Although the weapons of their Heavenly Dao Alliance couldn't compare to those held by the Quasi-Emperor level experts of the top forces opposite them. However, their Heavenly Dao Alliance never relied on these weapons, and as long as they could hold out until the ultimate Emperor weapon lost its power, they could truly deal with the Quasi-Emperors from these top forces before them. Whether I can unleash its power, you'll know if you try. The peak Quasi-Emperor Realm expert from Heaven Mending Pavilion slowly replied after hearing the words of the peak Quasi-Emperor Realm expert from Heavenly Dao Alliance. After speaking, the Quasi-Emperor Realm aura on his body directly erupted. Then he, holding his long spear, charged directly towards the peak Quasi-Emperor Realm expert from Heavenly Dao Alliance. Upon seeing this, the peak Quasi-Emperor Realm expert from Heavenly Dao Alliance quickly drew a long blade from his back. Then, without any hesitation, he directly charged towards the peak Quasi-Emperor Realm expert from Heaven Mending Pavilion. The next second, the battle between the two fully commenced. At the same time, the battles between other Quasi-Emperor level experts also fully began. Their strengths were already quite similar, so this battle didn't pose a significant threat to them. Besides the battle on the extraterrestrial battlefield, at this moment, within the world of the Heaven Mending Stone, the battle between the Great Saint-level experts of both sides was also unfolding. The number of Great Saint-level experts on both sides was roughly equal, so this battle was also very evenly matched. Therefore, the true victory of this battle might depend on the battle between the Alliance leader of Heavenly Dao Alliance and Azure Dragon City. And at this moment, the battle between the Alliance leader of Heavenly Dao Alliance and Azure Dragon City had truly reached its decisive stage. At this time, all the 5 Elements army from Heavenly Dao Alliance had been deployed. In the entire sky, 5 beams of light, each with a different color, could be seen constantly emitting terrifying radiance. At the same time, in Azure Dragon City, many disciples and elders wearing the attire of their respective forces were constantly resisting the Heavenly Dao Alliance's assault. Moreover, the aura emanating from these disciples and elders had reached an extremely terrifying level. However, Heavenly Dao Alliance clearly possessed a very powerful formation. Above the 5 Elements army, 5 terrifying creatures appeared. They were the legendary Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Black Tortoise, and Vermilion Bird. And most importantly, the aura emanating from the Qilin in the center had also reached an extremely terrifying level. The 5 divine beasts were continuously launching attacks towards Azure Dragon City. Moreover, the aura emanating from the 5 divine beasts had reached an extremely terrifying level. At this moment, the 5 divine beasts stood between heaven and earth as if they were true divine beasts. And the Heaven Mending Stone on the side of Azure Dragon City was still continuously emitting a terrifying aura. This terrifying aura continuously suppressed these 5 divine beasts. Otherwise, the 5 divine beasts would have probably already directly broken through Azure Dragon City's defenses. And the armies within Azure Dragon City were continuously channeling their power into the Heaven Mending Stone. Therefore, the 5 divine beasts were currently being continuously suppressed by the Heaven Mending Stone outside Azure Dragon City. This also made the Alliance leader of Heavenly Dao Alliance fully understand how powerful the Heaven Mending Stone truly was. As the battle continued, the color of the sky also became flickeringly bright and dark. Even as heaven and earth were constantly undergoing changes. The entire mountains and rivers were constantly transforming at this moment. It was as if the impact of the great battle was too immense. Just as the great battle between Heavenly Dao Alliance and Azure Dragon City was continuously unfolding, at this moment, in a hidden place unseen by them, several strong experts emitting terrifying auras were observing the battle. They were wearing the attire of the Xianyuan family. At the same time, each person's realm had reached the Great Saint realm, but as they watched the battle below, their faces showed no expression whatsoever. As expected of the possessor of the Red Dragon Fate. Although he hasn't achieved the final victory in this great battle yet, if the battle continues in this trend, perhaps he will be the ultimate victor. A great saint-level Grand Elder of the Xianyuan family slowly turned his gaze towards the Alliance leader of Heavenly Dao Alliance, saying with a sigh of emotion. He hadn't expected the Alliance leader of Heavenly Dao Alliance to possess such terrifying strength, but upon remembering that this person had the Red Dragon Fate, he felt it was only natural. Although his Red Dragon Fate will probably grow very easily in this era, it's a pity that a possessor of the Human Emperor Fate has appeared in this era. Otherwise, it should be very easy for this possessor of the Red Dragon Fate to grow. Another great saint of the Xianyuan family also said with some emotion at this moment. As he spoke, when he looked at the Alliance leader of Heavenly Dao Alliance, there was a hint of regret in his eyes. Clearly, he also felt regret for the Alliance leader of Heavenly Dao Alliance. Chapter 522: The Emergence of the Xianyuan Clan and the Origin of the Heaven-Mending Stone. After all, if it wasn't for the possessor of the Human Emperor Fate in this era, then even their Xianyuan family would think that this possessor of the Red Dragon Fate might become a Human Emperor realm expert. Of course, he only had the potential to become the possessor of the Human Emperor Fate. After all, apart from the possessor of the Human Emperor Fate, it was extremely difficult to become a Human Emperor realm expert. There was even little chance of becoming a Human Emperor realm expert. But speaking of which, where is the possessor of the Human Emperor Fate now? We've been searching for so long and haven't found him. Could it be that he isn't in the central region? Another great saint-level expert from the Xianyuan family slowly stepped forward and asked, a hint of confusion in her eyes as she spoke. Because they had been searching for so long and still hadn't found the possessor of the Human Emperor Fate, it was as if the possessor of the Human Emperor Fate didn't exist in this world. Actually, they couldn't be blamed. The main reason was that Chu Fan's strength had already broken through to the Quasi-Emperor realm. So now, even Supreme Being realm experts would find it difficult to locate him, let alone these great saint realm members of the Xianyuan family. Although the Xianyuan family members were very sensitive to the possessor of the Human Emperor Fate, Chu Fan was currently in the eastern region. So, it was naturally not that easy for them to find Chu Fan. We haven't found either the possessor of the Human Emperor Fate or Hell, so it seems that the possessor of the Human Emperor Fate in our era is not as simple as we imagined. The Grand Elder of the Xianyuan family, who had spoken initially, slowly stepped forward again and said that during this time, they were not only searching for the possessor of the Human Emperor Fate, they were also searching for the existence of Hell, but even so, they still hadn't found any trace of Hell. Therefore, these great saint-level experts of the Xianyuan family completely understood how mysterious the possessor of the Human Emperor Fate and Hell truly were. One must know what in the entire central region could escape the notice of their Xianyuan family. It could even be said that the growing Heavenly Dao Alliance had not escaped the notice of their Xianyuan family, from which one could see the status of the Xianyuan family in the central region. Of course, the Xianyuan family had not made a move during this period. So many people had already forgotten the existence of the Xianyuan family. For example, the current Heavenly God Academy and Heaven Mending Pavilion were known as the two most top-tier forces in the central region. They had completely forgotten the Xianyuan family. Although we still haven't found the possessor of the Human Emperor Fate, I believe that as the great war between the Heavenly Dao Alliance and these forces unfolds, the possessor of the Human Emperor Fate will appear. A great saint-level expert of the Xianyuan family slowly spoke, and after he finished speaking, his eyes were filled with anticipation as he looked at the great war below. The other great saint-level experts of the Xianyuan family also nodded after hearing his words, which was why they had come here. After all, as long as the great war between the Heavenly Dao Alliance and these forces was almost over, the possessor of the Human Emperor Fate would definitely appear. Otherwise, if all his luck were absorbed by the possessor of the Red Dragon Fate, then it would be difficult for the possessor of the Human Emperor Fate to become a Human Emperor realm expert. And as these great saint-level experts of the Xianyuan family had guessed, Chu Fan, currently in the eastern region, was naturally always paying attention to the great war between the Heavenly Dao Alliance and Azure Dragon City. At this moment, in Chang'an City in the eastern region, Chu Fan was sitting in the Imperial Palace, looking at the sky screen above. Of course, the war on the sky screen could only be seen inside Chu Fan's Imperial Palace. This was created by Heavenly Secret Master, who expended a great deal of power. At this moment, Chu Fan and the few people around him were leisurely observing the changes on the sky screen in the sky. The Great War on the sky screen was divided into 3 parts. One part was the Great War among the quasi-emperor level experts. The other part was the Great War among the Great Saint level experts. As for the last part, it was the Great War outside Azure Dragon City at this moment. I didn't expect the Heaven Mending Pavilion to even bring out the legendary Heaven Mending Stone. It seems this Great War won't end so easily. Heavenly Secret Master stared intently at the Heaven Mending Stone, his face filled with emotion. As the Heavenly Secret Master of Tianji Pavilion, he naturally understood the existence of the Heaven Mending Stone, but he hadn't expected the Heaven Mending Pavilion to bring out the Heaven Mending Stone this time. One must know that the Heaven Mending Stone was considered the most top-tier existence in the entire Heaven Mending Pavilion, and it could even be said to be an existence that could overturn the entire Heaven Mending Pavilion. But now the Heaven Mending Pavilion had actually brought it out directly. Such a situation had never occurred before. But it happened now. What kind of existence is the Heaven Mending Stone? Chu Fan was also a little confused after hearing Heavenly Secret Master's words. As a transmigrator, he naturally knew about the existence of the Heaven Mending Stone, but in his understanding, the Heaven Mending Stone had become the legendary Monkey King. That is, the great sage equal to Heaven, who was transformed from the Heaven Mending Stone. However, in this world, the Heaven Mending Stone was still just a stone, and it was obtained by the legendary Heaven Mending Pavilion. This instantly made Chu Fan feel a little surprised and confused. The Heaven Mending Stone is a legendary stone used to mend the sky. Of course, even my Tianji Pavilion has no records of what happened in the world at that time. Countless eons ago, a world-shaking great war broke out on our continent. That great war was as if immortals from the heavens descended to slaughter the experts of the mortal world. Therefore, during that great war, the entire continent was devastated, and supreme being realm experts were nothing in that great war. It could even be said that many great Emperor realm experts also perished in that great war. Eventually, due to this great war, a hole appeared in the sky. And as a hole appeared in the sky, the weak water from above also flowed into the mortal world, turning the entire mortal world into a hell on earth. However, at that time, a peerless expert appeared in the mortal world. She collected many heaven-mending stones from the entire world, and then used great magical power to mend the hole in the sky. But in the end, one heaven-mending stone remained in this world, and the heaven-mending stone of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion is the heaven-mending stone left in this world. This is the true origin of the heaven-mending stone. After hearing Chu Fan's words, Heavenly Secret Master began to explain the origin of the heaven-mending stone, and at the same time, a hint of uncertainty appeared in his eyes as he spoke. After all, their Tianji Pavilion did not have many records about that great war. Chapter 523 The Origin of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion. Chu Fan's doubts. All records about the Heaven-Mending Stone were deduced by the later Tianji Pavilion, so even Heavenly Secret Master himself couldn't be sure if all records about the Heaven-Mending Stone were true. And if all records about the Heaven-Mending Stone were true, then the great war that once took place must have far exceeded their imagination. After all, to be able to shatter the entire sky, how much power would that require? Chu Fan was also somewhat surprised after hearing Heavenly Secret Master's story. He hadn't expected such a terrifying war to have occurred in the past. However, as he listened to the story of mending the heavens, it suddenly sounded a bit like the mythological novels he had read in his previous life. After all, the concept of mending the heavens in those mythological novels from his previous life came about in this way. Moreover, the origin of NEWBIE mending the heavens was also due to the war between Gong and the water god, which resulted in a giant hole appearing in the sky. What's more important is that in another mythological novel, Ruoshui also came to the human world. However, in that mythological novel, the one who managed Ruoshui was not NEWBIE, nor was it the person who mended the heavens. Therefore, the stories of this world are very different from the mythological stories he is familiar with. If that's the case, then how did the Heaven-Mending Pavilion obtain the Heaven-Mending Stone? Was the Heaven-Mending Pavilion not called the Heaven-Mending Pavilion before it obtained the Heaven-Mending Stone? Chu Fan's face showed another hint of surprise as he looked at Heavenly Secret Master and asked. At this moment, Chu Fan also realized that although Heavenly Secret Master's strength was not particularly powerful, of course, this was in comparison to the current Great Xia Empire. After all, the current Great Xia Empire has 3 alternative path attainment experts. Therefore, a peak quasi-emperor realm expert naturally doesn't count for much. And now, Heavenly Secret Master's most important role in the Great Xia Empire is to let Chu Fan understand what happened in the past, or to let him understand ancient history. Legend has it that tens of millions of years ago, when Xinyuan Human Emperor had not yet appeared, the sect master of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion was a great saint-level expert. In that era, there were many great saint-level experts. It could even be said that the Heaven Mending Pavilion at that time was not called the Heaven Mending Pavilion. Instead, it was called the Qingchang sect, and it was merely a second-rate force. However, the sect master of the Qingchang sect in that era obtained the Heaven Mending Stone by chance. One must know, this was the Heaven Mending Stone left behind by mending the heavens. The sect master of the Qingchang sect, having obtained the Heaven Mending Stone, also successfully broke through to the Great Emperor realm by virtue of its miraculous properties. Subsequently, he established the Heaven Mending Pavilion, which is the origin of the Heaven Mending Pavilion. However, later sect masters of the Heaven Mending Pavilion began to understand less about the Heaven Mending Stone. Therefore, the later Heaven Mending Pavilion gradually began to change, and later it directly went into seclusion. In the era when Xianyuan Human Emperor appeared, the Heaven Mending Pavilion had completely gone into seclusion. However, a few eras after Xianyuan Human Emperor, another great Emperor-level expert appeared in the Heaven Mending Pavilion. With the appearance of this great Emperor-level expert, the Heaven Mending Pavilion once again became one of the top forces in the central domain. And in the hundreds of thousands of years that followed, another great Emperor-level expert appeared in the Heaven Mending Pavilion, making the Heaven Mending Pavilion one of the two top forces in the central domain. Heavenly Secret Master then slowly began to explain the origin of the Heaven Mending Pavilion to Chu Fan. The Tianji Pavilion also has many records about the Heaven Mending Pavilion. After all, the Heaven Mending Pavilion is one of the two top forces in the central domain, and more importantly, 3 great Emperor-level experts have appeared in the Heaven Mending Pavilion. One must know that the appearance of one great Emperor-level expert in a general top force is already considered the pinnacle of existence. But 3 have appeared in the Heaven Mending Pavilion. Of course, in addition to the Heaven Mending Pavilion, several great Emperor-level experts have also appeared in the Heavenly God Academy. Chu Fan was also somewhat surprised after hearing Heavenly Secret Master's introduction. He hadn't expected the Heaven Mending Pavilion to have come about in this way. And 3 great Emperor-level experts had even appeared in the Heaven Mending Pavilion. He knew that in the novels he read, the appearance of one great Emperor-level expert was already considered an ancient aristocratic family. But the current Heaven Mending Pavilion has seen the appearance of 3 great Emperor-level experts. In that case, the Heaven Mending Pavilion is indeed considered a top force. Although the true function of the Heaven Mending Stone is unknown, all those great Emperor-level experts of the Heaven Mending Pavilion became great Emperor Realm experts by relying on the Heaven Mending Stone. So, it is rumored that the Heaven Mending Stone can help people break through to the great Emperor Realm. Of course, this is just a rumor. After seeing Chu Fan's expression, Heavenly Secret Master slowly said this again, and after speaking, his face also showed a hint of curiosity. Although Heavenly Secret Master is the contemporary successor of the Tianji Pavilion, he has never truly witnessed the Heaven Mending Stone. After all, the Heaven Mending Stone has not appeared for tens of thousands of years. Its appearance this time was to counter the Heavenly Dao Alliance. Otherwise, the Heaven Mending Pavilion would not have brought out the Heaven Mending Stone. Chu Fan was even more surprised after hearing Heavenly Secret Master's words, and at the same time, he became more curious about the Heaven Mending Stone. However, at this moment, Chu Fan suddenly thought of something, so he slowly asked Heavenly Secret Master with a hint of curiosity. If the Heaven Mending Stone can truly help people achieve the Great Emperor Realm, then why can the Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone resist the temptation of the Heaven Mending Stone? After all, perhaps the Heaven Mending Stone could help them find the path they want to take. Chu Fan's conjecture is actually very correct. After all, if the Heaven Mending Stone could really help people achieve the Great Emperor Realm, then how could the Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone let it go? After all, if the Heaven Mending Stone had the ability to help people achieve the Great Emperor Realm, then the entire world would probably not let it go. And who knows if the Heaven Mending Stone has other uses? Just based on this point, those Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone would not let go of the Heaven Mending Pavilion's Heaven Mending Stone. And only 3 great Emperor-level experts have appeared in the Heaven Mending Pavilion, and these 3 great Emperor Realm experts have now fallen. Therefore, these Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone should have already snatched the Heaven Mending Stone. Thinking of this, more doubts appeared on Chu Fan's face. In fact, the Heaven Mending Pavilion has also been taken care of by the Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone many times because of the Heaven Mending Stone. For example, once Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone came out and launched the Dark Turmoil. At that time, 5 Supreme Beings headed towards the Heaven Mending Pavilion, but in the end, they all returned empty-handed. Heavenly Secret Master naturally understood the meaning of Chu Fan's words, so he looked leisurely into the distance, and then slowly spoke about what had happened in the past. At the same time, Heavenly Secret Master himself wasn't particularly clear in his heart why those Supreme Beings returned empty-handed. Chapter 5:24 The Great Battle Between the Heaven-Mending Pavilion and the Supreme Being, the Mysterious Heavenly God Academy. After all, at that time, 5 Supreme Being level experts went to attack the Heaven-Mending Pavilion. Based on the combat power of the Supreme Being level, they should have been able to completely breach the Heaven-Mending Pavilion, yet the Heaven-Mending Pavilion directly repelled these Supreme Being level experts. This caused many forces at the time to find it unbelievable. Could it be that the Heaven-Mending Pavilion still possessed latent power left behind by great Emperor-level experts at that time? But even the latent power left by great Emperor-level experts probably couldn't stop the attack of 5 Supreme Being-level experts. Chu Fan was even more surprised after hearing Heavenly Secret Master's words. He had not expected that even 5 Supreme Being-level experts attempting to attack the Heaven-Mending Pavilion previously had returned empty-handed. One must know that although the strength of Supreme Being-level experts cannot compare to the Great Emperor realm, if they undergo ultimate sublimation, even if the Heaven-Mending Pavilion truly had one Great Emperor-level expert, they likely wouldn't be able to stop the ultimate sublimation of 5 Supreme Being-level experts. Regarding what exactly happened the first time the Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone went to the Heaven-Mending Pavilion to seize the Heaven-Mending Stone, the entire central region is unaware. Even my TNG Pavilion cannot fully investigate what happened that time. However, during the second time the Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone launched the Dark Turmoil, these Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone once again headed towards the Heaven-Mending Pavilion. Furthermore, the most crucial point is that 2 of the Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone underwent ultimate sublimation directly and returned to their peak period. Nevertheless, the Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone were still repelled by the Heaven-Mending Pavilion. It was this great battle that allowed the TNG Pavilion to uncover a hint regarding why the Heaven-Mending Pavilion was able to defeat the Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone. It turned out to be because of the Heaven-Mending Stone. The 2 great Emperor-level experts of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion had left all their power within the Heaven-Mending Stone, and the Heaven-Mending Stone happened to be able to project these great Emperor-level experts into this era. Therefore, during that incident, the 2 great Emperor-level experts of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion were both projected back by the Heaven-Mending Stone. This was how they defeated the Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone. However, due to the massive consumption of the Heaven-Mending Stone, the Heaven-Mending Pavilion remained in seclusion for the next tens of thousands of years. Until hundreds of thousands of years ago, another prodigy appeared in the Heaven-Mending Pavilion. This prodigy was considered a top-tier prodigy even across the entire world. Although his cultivation speed couldn't compare to Xianyuan Human Emperor, in just 1,000 years he had already cultivated to the peak Quasi-Emperor realm, and furthermore, relying on the Heaven-Mending Stone, he directly achieved a breakthrough to the Great Emperor realm. This allowed the Heaven-Mending Pavilion to reappear in the world. However, this great Emperor of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion completely vanished while searching for the Tao of Immortal Ascension. Nonetheless, no one dared to challenge the Heaven-Mending Pavilion again. After all, no one knew whether the Heaven-Mending Stone within the Heaven-Mending Pavilion could project the 3 great Emperor-level experts of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion. Heavenly Secret Master began to introduce the past events of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion once more. As he spoke, a look of admiration appeared on his face. Clearly, he greatly admired the last great Emperor of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion. Chu Fan was also somewhat shocked after hearing Heavenly Secret Master's introduction of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion. He had not expected that the Heaven-Mending Pavilion had suffered 2 attacks from Supreme Being-level experts. Moreover, neither of these 2 attacks by the Supreme Beings from the Forbidden Zone managed to completely eliminate the Heaven-Mending Pavilion. They were even tricked by the Heaven-Mending Pavilion. Naturally, what excited Chu Fan even more at this moment was the Heaven-Mending Stone, as the Heaven-Mending Stone could project great Emperor-level experts into this era. Who wouldn't want to possess such a terrifying treasure? Furthermore, and more importantly, if Chu Fan wanted to unify the entire continent now, it would be difficult, because he would have to face the Heaven-Mending Pavilion and a host of other top forces. Since the Heaven-Mending Pavilion now possessed the Heaven-Mending Stone, such a heaven-defying treasure, it would be difficult for Chu Fan to defeat the Heaven-Mending Pavilion. After all, who knew if the Heaven-Mending Pavilion would project 3 great Emperor-level experts? Although the Great Xia Empire currently had 3 beings who had taken the alternative path to enlightenment, it would still be too difficult for them to defeat 3 great Emperor-level experts. Fortunately, the Heavenly Tao Alliance and the Heaven-Mending Pavilion were currently pitted against each other, allowing Chu Fan to seize the opportunity to observe the final trump cards of both the Heaven-Mending Pavilion and the Heavenly Tao Alliance. In that case, the Heaven-Mending Pavilion is now the most powerful force in the entire central region. After thinking this, Chu Fan finally relaxed, but he still looked at Heavenly Secret Master curiously and inquired. Since his great Xia Empire was preparing to launch the final war against the whole world, Chu Fan naturally needed to first understand the top forces of the central region. Of course, besides the current Heaven Mending Pavilion, Chu Fan also wanted to see if there were any other forces comparable to the Heaven Mending Pavilion. Excluding the Xianyuan family, the only force currently comparable to the Heaven Mending Pavilion is probably the Heavenly God Academy. Moreover, the Heavenly God Academy is extremely mysterious. One could even say it is more mysterious than the Heaven Mending Pavilion. Heavenly Secret Master sighed slightly and spoke again after hearing Chu Fan's words. Although he strongly believed that Chu Fan could unify this era and successfully advance to the Human Emperor realm. However, there were quite a few top forces in the central region right now. Naturally, the Xianyuan family was directly ignored by Heavenly Secret Master. As if the Xianyuan family knew Chu Fan possessed the Human Emperor fate, they would definitely help Chu Fan become a Human Emperor realm expert. This was something the Xianyuan family was bound to do. Heavenly God Academy. Chu Fan was speechless after hearing Heavenly Secret Master's words. He had not expected another Heavenly God Academy to appear now. It was already difficult enough dealing with the Heaven Mending Pavilion, but now there was an additional Heavenly God Academy. Of course, Chu Fan naturally kept the Xianyuan family, mentioned by Heavenly Secret Master, in mind. After all, Heavenly Secret Master had mentioned the Xianyuan family many times. Chu Fan even felt that the Xianyuan family was probably not as simple as imagined. However, because of his Human Emperor fate, Chu Fan naturally wasn't overly worried about the Xianyuan family. Of course, this did not mean Chu Fan would trust the Xianyuan family. The Heavenly God Academy has an extremely ancient origin. It appeared even before the Heaven Mending Pavilion existed, and legend has it that the Heavenly God Academy already existed in the Immortal Ancient Era. One must know that tens of millions of years have passed since that time. Even my Tianji Pavilion has very few records regarding the Immortal Ancient Era. Therefore, the divine domain of the Heavenly God Academy is rarely recorded even by the Tianji Pavilion. Perhaps the Xianyuan family has records concerning the Heavenly God Academy. When Heavenly Secret Master heard Chu Fan mention the Heavenly God Academy, a solemn expression instantly appeared on his face. Perhaps when the Heaven Mending Pavilion was mentioned, they still had some understanding. But regarding the true Heavenly God Academy, even a top force like their Tianji Pavilion could not see clearly. Chapter 525 The Mysterious Heavenly God Academy. The feud between Emperor Haoran and Emperor Longting. Chu Fan immediately became interested after hearing Heavenly Secret Master's words. At this time, Chu Fan increasingly felt that this land was not as simple as he had imagined. After all, tens of millions of years were too long for him. He had only been in this world for a few years. However, the Heavenly God Academy had existed in this world for over tens of millions of years. It could even be said that it had far exceeded tens of millions of years. After all, the Heaven Mending Pavilion, which already existed tens of millions of years ago, couldn't even compare with the Heavenly God Academy. That meant the Heavenly God Academy had existed in this world for hundreds of millions of years. It sounded terrifying. If the Heavenly God Academy is so terrifying, then why is it still on par with the Heaven Mending Pavilion now? Chu Fan naturally learned about the current relationship between the Heavenly God Academy and the Heaven Mending Pavilion from Heavenly Secret Master's words. So he looked at Heavenly Secret Master with a hint of surprise and asked. The biggest difference between the Heavenly God Academy and the Heaven Mending Pavilion is that the Heavenly God Academy is not as overbearing as the Heaven Mending Pavilion, and the Heavenly God Academy rarely gets involved in worldly disputes. This time, the Heavenly God Academy's appearance, besides stopping the Heavenly Dao Alliance, probably has a greater secret. Heavenly Secret Master thought for a moment before slowly speaking. Then he began to explain the existence of the Heavenly God Academy. It turned out that the Heavenly God Academy was created by an unknown powerful expert. The Heavenly God Academy's principle was that as long as this world was not plunged into chaos, they would not participate in the great wars of this world. This was also why the Heavenly God Academy's sense of presence was so low. Of course, if a peerless prodigy wanted to join the Heavenly God Academy, then the Heavenly God Academy would naturally welcome them. However, entering the Heavenly God Academy was not that easy, because one needed to pass trials to enter the Heavenly God Academy. Only those who could pass the trials set by the Heavenly God Academy could enter the Heavenly God Academy. And throughout many eras, not many have been able to enter the Heavenly God Academy. Therefore, many prodigies in the Heavenly God Academy are the descendants of the old prodigies within the Heavenly God Academy. And the strength of the masters in the Heavenly God Academy is also very powerful. It can even be said that the strength of the Heavenly God Academy's true Dean is even more terrifying. Of course, the Dean who appeared on the battlefield now is not the true Dean of the Heavenly God Academy. This Dean is merely the outer core Dean of the Heavenly God Academy, while the true dean of the Heavenly God Academy controls the entire Heavenly God Academy. Under normal circumstances, he would not appear. Therefore, Heavenly Secret Master guessed that the Heavenly God Academy's appearance in this era had its own plan. Otherwise, they should not participate in the Great War between the Heavenly Dao Alliance and the Central Domain. Moreover, even if the Heavenly God Academy wanted to participate in this Great War, they couldn't have appeared so quickly. After all, they usually only appear to tie up loose ends. Most importantly, according to the calculations of the Tianji Pavilion, the great Emperor-level experts who appeared in the Heavenly God Academy could not be fewer than those in the Heaven-Mending Pavilion. That is to say, the Tianji Pavilion knew of at least 3 great Emperor-level experts in the Heavenly God Academy. And more importantly, many other great Emperor-level experts have strong ties to the Heavenly God Academy. For example, Great Emperor Howren of the Xianyuan family once had a strong connection with the Heavenly God Academy. Great Emperor Howren also had very powerful talent when he was young, but although his cultivation talent was very strong, Xianyuan Howren did not like to cultivate. He only liked to read. Even so, his cultivation was considered top tier among the younger generation. Later, after the Heavenly God Academy learned about Xianyuan Howren, they investigated Xianyuan Howren's talent. And after learning Xianyuan Howren's true talent, the Heavenly God Academy did not make Xianyuan Howren go through the trials they set. Instead, they directly admitted Xianyuan Howren into the Heavenly God Academy. This also laid a great foundation for the growth of Xianyuan Howren, Great Emperor Howren. After Xianyuan Howren was admitted into the Heavenly God Academy, for 100 years, Xianyuan Howren did not appear in the public eye. Everyone thought that Xianyuan Howren had reached a state of forgetting himself in his studies. But at this time, Xianyuan Howren slowly walked out of the Heavenly God Academy. More importantly, at this time, Xianyuan Howren had already reached the Great Sage Perfection realm, just one step away from the legendary Quasi-Emperor realm. And more importantly, Xianyuan Howren's strength was terrifying. With just his cultivation in the Great Sage Perfection realm, he could defeat a Quasi-Emperor realm expert. At the same time, what was incredible was that Xianyuan Howren at this time was very different from the Xianyuan Howren of the past. In the past, Xianyuan Howren always liked to read, but Xianyuan Howren, who came out of the Heavenly God Academy, began to like the Tao of cultivation. Even the experts of the Xianyuan family came to investigate Xianyuan Howren's changes, but they didn't find any problems. It was as if Xianyuan Howren suddenly understood on his own. However, the relationship between Xianyuan Howren and the Xianyuan family later became increasingly strained, and ultimately, Xianyuan Howren almost left the Xianyuan family. It was only because the Xianyuan family, no matter what, was in existence with the foundation of the human emperor. So, in the end, the Xianyuan family managed to keep Xianyuan Howren in check. At the same time, the relationship between the Xianyuan family and the Heavenly God Academy also gradually became hostile. However, it was also when Xianyuan Howren achieved the Quasi-Emperor realm that a peerless prodigy appeared in the Xianyuan family. This peerless prodigy had always crushed the prodigies of his generation since he began to cultivate. Even when Xianyuan Howren was in the Great Saint realm, this peerless prodigy was only in the entering Saint realm. However, he entered the Quasi-Emperor realm at the same time as Xianyuan Howren. Because of this, Xianyuan Howren and Xianyuan Longting were known as the dual prodigies of the Xianyuan family. But the relationship between Xianyuan Howren and Xianyuan Longting was not very friendly. The two fought from the Quasi-Emperor realm all the way to the peak Quasi-Emperor realm. Ultimately, Xianyuan Howren, with the help of the Heavenly God Academy's luck, successfully achieved a breakthrough to the Great Emperor realm, and then successfully became Great Emperor Howren of that era. However, what was incredible was that Xianyuan Longting also, in that era, relying on the foundation left by the Xianyuan family and Xianyuan Human Emperor, successfully achieved a breakthrough to the Great Emperor realm. That era was also known as the ultimate era of the Xianyuan family, but Xianyuan Howren and the Xianyuan family were indeed not that friendly. In the end, Xianyuan Howren even engaged in an ultimate battle with Xianyuan Longting. As for who the victor of this great battle was, the entire world was unclear. In any case, Xianyuan Longting eventually returned to the Xianyuan family and embarked on the same Tao as Xianyuan Human Emperor. And Xianyuan Howren, Great Emperor Howren, embarked on a different Tao, ultimately getting lost in other star domains, and both great emperors completely disappeared from the continent. This also let the forces of the Central Domain know that the Heavenly God Academy was not as simple as they imagined, and it was even uncertain whether Xianyuan Howren, Great Emperor Howren, was still the same Xianyuan Howren as before. Chapter 526, A Fierce Battle, the Blood-Red Gem in the Heavenly Dao Alliance Palace. After hearing the deeds of the two great emperors of the Xianyuan family, Chu Fan was also somewhat puzzled. At the same time, he finally understood why the Heavenly God Academy was said to be extremely strange. Just the fact that they could cultivate Xianyuan Howren of the Xianyuan family, the great Emperor Howren, to such a level was already incredible. Moreover, even the Tianji Pavilion did not know how many great Emperor-level experts had appeared in the Heavenly God Academy. So the mystery surrounding the Heavenly God Academy naturally made Chu Fan feel unbelievable. Simultaneously, Chu Fan finally understood that although the strength of his great Xia Empire was sufficient, unifying the entire world would be quite difficult. After all, no one knew the true trump cards of the Heavenly God Academy and the Heaven Mending Pavilion. Perhaps the great Xia Empire still had the strength to contend with the current Heaven Mending Pavilion. But what about the true Heavenly God Academy? Furthermore, according to Heavenly Secret Master's conjecture, the Heavenly God Academy had its own objective this time. Otherwise, it would be impossible for the Heavenly God Academy to appear in the public eye so quickly. However, reality was exactly as Heavenly Secret Master had surmised. Just at this moment, while Chu Fan and the others were paying attention to the major battle in the central region, the conflict was also continuously escalating on the other side of the central region. Moreover, because the Heaven Mending Pavilion had brought out the Heaven Mending Stone, the Heaven Mending Pavilion side currently held the advantage. Although the strength of the soldiers of the Heavenly Dao Alliance was also formidable, under the blessing of the Heaven Mending Stone, the strength of the Heaven Mending Pavilion's alliance exceeded that of the soldiers of the Heavenly Dao Alliance. As the great battle continued, the soldiers of the Heavenly Dao Alliance were constantly falling. In fact, in less than 2 days of fighting, the number of fallen soldiers of the Heavenly Dao Alliance had already reached several million. One must know that 1 million soldiers was considered a considerable force in the entire Heavenly Dao Alliance. The Tiandao Alliance leader looked toward the Azure Dragon City ahead, his eyes filled with rage. He had not expected such a massive number of his soldiers in the Heavenly Dao Alliance to fall in just a few days. This also caused the Tiandao Alliance leader to deeply resent the sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion. In fact, the Tiandao Alliance leader now wished he could immediately slay the sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion. Naturally, they were not paying attention to the Great Saint level and Quasi-Emperor level battlefields at this time, because battles at the Great Saint level and Quasi-Emperor level would not end so easily. After all, not every Great Saint level expert could easily slay their opponent. Although the experts from the Great Xia Empire usually seemed to effortlessly slay their opposing experts, when facing experts whose strengths were comparable, the battle between them could even last for 100 years, so a few days was naturally not enough time to determine a victor. Therefore, the Great Saint level and Quasi-Emperor level battlefields currently showed no significant fluctuations. Inside the Heavenly Dao Alliance Palace at this time, the Tiandao Alliance leader watched the battlefield ahead, his eyes filled with fury. Is this the legendary Heaven Mending Stone? It truly is monstrous. If my Heavenly Dao Alliance had no trump card, then the Heavenly Dao Alliance truly couldn't win this battle. Following this, the Tiandao Alliance leader looked leisurely toward a blood-red light within the Heavenly Dao Alliance Palace. This blood-red light enveloped a blood-red gem. More importantly, the light emanating from this blood-red gem far surpassed the radiance emitted by ordinary treasures. What was even more crucial was that the aura radiating from this blood-red gem was extremely intense, as if the gem contained a gigantic heart, and it was continuously beating. Upon seeing this sight, the Tiandao Alliance leader's eyes naturally revealed a look of determination. Following this, he gave an order to the soldiers beside him. Go and bring back all of our fallen soldiers. After hearing the words of the Tiandao Alliance leader, the soldiers beside him instantly showed expressions of excitement. Soon after, the soldiers of the Heavenly Dao Alliance reappeared on the battlefield. But this time, the soldiers of the Heavenly Dao Alliance who appeared in the center of the battlefield did not directly launch an attack on Azure Dragon City like the other soldiers. Instead, they began collecting the corpses of the soldiers of the Heavenly Dao Alliance scattered across the battlefield, and after gathering them, they immediately left the battleground with the bodies. Their actions naturally drew the attention of the sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion. The sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion watched the disappearing soldiers of the Heavenly Dao Alliance with a look of confusion. Does the Heavenly Dao Alliance still have some trump card that they would actually take away all these fallen soldiers? The sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion looked toward the Heavenly Dao Alliance with a hint of worry, and then he spoke with a hint of pleasure in his voice. After speaking, the hint of worry in his eyes was released, unable to be concealed. At this moment, a look of surprise also appeared in the eyes of the Dean of the Celestial God Academy, standing beside him. Although the Dean of the Celestial God Academy had rarely participated in this great battle since the appearance of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion's Heaven-Mending Stone. It could even be said that the Dean of the Celestial God Academy had directly entrusted all the Heavenly God Academy disciples to the Sect Master of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion. But now, upon seeing the changes on the Heavenly Dao Alliance side, he was still somewhat surprised. He was even extremely puzzled. Although we don't know what trump card the Heavenly Dao Alliance possesses, we absolutely cannot let them take these corpses back. Otherwise, something bad might happen. At this point, the Sect Master of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion showed a look of determination in his eyes. Following this, he activated the Heaven-Mending Stone above Azure Dragon City, and the Heaven-Mending Stone instantly emitted multicolored splendor. This multicolored splendor was like a cage, directly enveloping all the armies of the Heavenly Dao Alliance and their allies below. The moving soldiers were continuously transporting the corpses of the soldiers of the Heavenly Dao Alliance were also firmly trapped by this multicolored splendor. However, just as the Sect Master of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion made this decision, the corpses of hundreds of thousands of Heavenly Dao Alliance soldiers on the other side were delivered to the main hall of the Heavenly Dao Alliance. Looking at the corpses of the Heavenly Dao Alliance army appearing before him, the Tian Dao Alliance leader revealed a maniacal smile on his face. Following this, he grinned at the soldiers in front of him. Then, a look of excitement instantly appeared in his eyes. In the next second, the Tian Dao Alliance leader immediately injected all his power into the blood-red gem before him. Chapter 5:27 The Resurrection of the Heavenly Alliance Soldiers and the Uneasy Heart of the Patching Heaven Pavilion Master. As the Tian Dao Alliance leader's power continuously injected into the blood-red gem, the blood-red light emanating from the gem intensified. At the same time, the blood-red gem was filled with terrifying vitality. Even the surrounding blood was completely absorbed by it. More importantly, an Azure Dragon appeared behind the Tian Dao Alliance leader at this moment, spiraling as if it were a real Azure Dragon. Then, the Azure Dragon plunged directly into the Crimson Gem. The next second, the Azure Dragon continuously circled around the blood-red gem. The moment the Azure Dragon plunged into the blood-red gem, a terrifying aura also emanated from the Tian Dao Alliance's palace. Subsequently, the blood-red light from the blood-red gem continuously drifted throughout the entire hall. The next second, these blood-red lights transformed into wisps of blood-red rays that continuously injected into the bodies of the deceased soldiers. As these wisps of blood-red rays injected into the bodies of the deceased soldiers, these originally shattered corpses slowly began to recover. Even the headless corpses now grew a head, which then fused directly with the rest of the body. As these blood-red lights continuously flowed through these corpses, the bodies of the Tian Dao Alliance's army also began to slowly recover. In just a few breaths, all the bodies of the soldiers in front of the gate had fully recovered. Then, they slowly opened their eyes. A blood-red light also flashed in their eyes. However, this blood-red light quickly disappeared. Instead, all the soldiers of the Heavenly Dao Alliance came back to life. Their eyes filled with excitement as they looked at the Tian Dao Alliance leader. Then, all the revived soldiers excitedly saluted the Tian Dao Alliance leader. We respectfully greet the Alliance leader. At this moment, they were utterly devoted to their Alliance leader. One could even say that if the Tian Dao Alliance leader asked them to commit suicide, they would do it. After all, the Tian Dao Alliance leader could resurrect them indefinitely. So what did it matter if they committed suicide? All of you are fine sons of my Tian Dao Alliance. Now that you have recovered, return to the battlefield. This venerable one can restore you indefinitely. Seeing the recovered soldiers, the Tian Dao Alliance leader's eyes burned with fervor. Then, with a wave of his hand, he continued to issue orders to the revived soldiers. Your subordinate obeys. After the Tian Dao Alliance leader's words fell, these revived soldiers, as if injected with a stimulant, continued towards the battlefield. After all, even if they fell on the battlefield, their alliance leader could resurrect them all. So what did they have to fear now? However, what these soldiers did not know was that after all of them left the palace, a strange smile appeared in the eyes of the Tian Dao Alliance leader. At the same time, he also withdrew the Azure Dragon from the blood-red gem, and then he returned to the top of the main hall to observe the great battle. As these Tian Dao Alliance soldiers were resurrected, they joined the great battle without the slightest hesitation. And because these soldiers knew they could be resurrected indefinitely, the ferocity of the Tian Dao Alliance soldiers now far exceeded that of the allied army before them. These Tian Dao Alliance soldiers even exchanged injuries for injuries, some even directly sacrificing their lives to take the lives of the allied army. The Sect Master of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion's eyes instantly showed a look of surprise when he saw this scene. and he looked at the battlefield below with a hint of disbelief. This army that joined later seems to fear no death. Are they the Tiandao Alliance's deathsworn? Then he looked at the constantly falling Tiandao Alliance soldiers below and the cultivators who fell alongside them, speaking with a hint of disbelief. After speaking, he continued to observe the fallen Tiandao Alliance soldiers. This is probably not the Tiandao Alliance's deathsworn, because he didn't see that they had a lot of bloodstains on them before joining the battlefield, looking as if they came from another battlefield. Perhaps these Tiandao Alliance soldiers are related to the corpses the Tiandao Alliance brought back earlier. At this moment, even the dean of the Celestial God Academy, who had always maintained a neutral expression, showed a hint of terror on his face. At the same time, he also had a suspicion in his heart. Of course, if his suspicion was true, then it would be extremely difficult for them to defeat the Tiandao Alliance in this great battle. You mean these soldiers are the resurrected soldiers who fell just now? How is that possible? Even a great emperor-level expert couldn't resurrect people. After hearing the words of the dean of the Celestial God Academy, the sect master of the heaven-mending pavilion's eyes instantly showed a look of shock. Then, he shook his head and spoke to the dean of the Celestial God Academy. He did not believe that the Tiandao Alliance leader could resurrect others. If the Tiandao Alliance leader could indeed resurrect these soldiers, then they might truly lose this battle. After all, in this great battle so far, they had also lost millions. This meant that their current losses were roughly similar to those of the Tiandao Alliance. If the soldiers on the Tiandao Alliance's side could be continuously resurrected, then how could they stop the Tiandao Alliance? Perhaps the Tiandao Alliance also obtained some peerless treasure. After all, your heaven-mending pavilion's heaven-mending stone can also project the heaven-mending pavilion's former great emperors. Perhaps the Tiandao Alliance also obtained a similar treasure. The dean of the Celestial God Academy spoke with a solemn expression at this moment, as he still firmly believed in his idea. He felt that there must be some unspeakable secret within the Tiandao Alliance, and this unspeakable secret was closely related to these resurrected soldiers. After hearing the words of the dean of the Celestial God Academy, the sect master of the heaven-mending pavilion's eyes instantly became solemn, although he was not particularly convinced that these soldiers were resurrected soldiers. However, the words of the dean of the Celestial God Academy also gave him a reminder. Since their heaven-mending pavilion could obtain a divine object like the heaven-mending stone, then perhaps the Tiandao Alliance could also obtain heaven-defying things. Moreover, more importantly, the Tiandao Alliance had risen in just tens of thousands of years, so the treasures they possessed would definitely not be simple. Chapter 528, The Conspiracy of the Heavenly God Academy. Chu Fan's human emperor fate exposed. However, at this moment, the sect master of the heaven-mending pavilion suddenly had another idea in his heart, so he slowly pointed at the soldiers of the Heavenly Dao Alliance below and said, "Perhaps the Heavenly Dao Alliance's supplies are insufficient, which is why they can only use the armor of the fallen soldiers." After saying this, the sect master of the heaven-mending pavilion didn't really believe this excuse himself. The dean of the Celestial God Academy, beside him, rolled his eyes at him and continued watching the great battle below. However, if one looked closely, they could see a hint of madness in the dean of the Celestial God Academy's eyes, and within that madness, there was also a hint of anticipation. It was as if the dean of the Celestial God Academy was greatly looking forward to this great battle. More importantly, the heaven-mending stone in the sky now directly enveloped both the Heavenly Dao Alliance army and their allied army. Therefore, it was very easy for the Heavenly Dao Alliance army to enter this great battle, but it was extremely difficult for them to escape from it. Thus, within the range of the heaven-mending stone, both great armies were constantly falling. In fact, hundreds or even thousands of soldiers fell every minute and every second. It could be said that the current scene was truly a battlefield reaper. In just a short period of fighting, tens of thousands of soldiers had fallen on the battlefield. At this time, the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance also arrived above the palace, observing the great battle below. Watching the constantly falling soldiers of the Heavenly Dao Alliance, the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance showed no anger on his face. Instead, he looked upon the battle ahead with eyes that seemed to be watching a good show. So, the Heaven-Mending Pavilion used the Heaven-Mending Stone to completely seal off this great battle. This means if this Venerable One wants to resurrect these soldiers, I will have to expose myself directly. But what harm is there in being exposed? Following this, the corner of the Heavenly Dao Alliance Master's mouth curved slightly upward, and he stared calmly at the great battle beneath the Heaven-Mending Stone. And as the great battle beneath the Heaven-Mending Stone grew fiercer, the speed at which the two armies fell also increased rapidly. However, While the Heavenly Dao Alliance and the Allied Army were engaged in this great battle, an unknown conspiracy was taking place on another immortal mountain in the central region. This immortal mountain was none other than the Heavenly God Academy, the Heavenly God Academy that was unknown to everyone. The entire central region did not know where the entrance to the Heavenly God Academy was, because any prodigy favored by the Heavenly God Academy was personally brought into the Heavenly God Academy by them. Therefore, others naturally did not know the location of the Heavenly God Academy. Furthermore, and more importantly, the prodigies brought into the Heavenly God Academy would never reveal the true location of the Heavenly God Academy after leaving. It was as if they had been completely brainwashed by the Heavenly God Academy. Inside the Heavenly God Academy at this moment, hundreds of old ancestors, exuding terrifying chi, were watching a light screen in the sky. The content displayed on this light screen was precisely the great battle between the soldiers of the Heavenly Dao Alliance and the Allied Army. These old ancestors watched the great battle on the screen with little expression in their eyes. I didn't expect a possessor of the Red Dragon Fate to appear in this epic. What a pity he appeared in this particular epic. Otherwise, he might truly have become a human Emperor realm expert. Just then, an old ancestor spoke slowly, but after speaking, a look of disdain flashed in his eyes. It was as if he held absolute contempt for this possessor of the Red Dragon Fate. Although the Red Dragon Fate can indeed allow one to become a human Emperor realm expert, this epic possesses the legendary human Emperor Fate. He is the existence that our Heavenly God Academy needs to take seriously. I just wonder if he is fully matured yet. Right after the old ancestor finished speaking, an old ancestor in red robes, sitting beside him slowly, stood up and spoke. It was apparent that this old ancestor in red robes was a very volatile individual. While mentioning the possessor of the human Emperor Fate, a hint of fear flashed in the old ancestor's eyes. After all, the previous possessor of the human Emperor Fate had caused great losses to their Heavenly God Academy. However, at that time, they did not know that the possessor of the human Emperor Fate could grow to such a degree. It was due to their carelessness that their Heavenly God Academy suffered such severe losses. Although this epic possesses the human Emperor Fate, according to our calculations, the possessor of the human Emperor Fate is currently not in the central region. Moreover, he should not have fully matured yet. However, the possessor of the human Emperor Fate seemed to have appeared in the central region last time. According to the old ancestor's deduction, he should be the mysterious young master of the underworld. Just as the old ancestor in red robes finished speaking, another elder in white robes slowly stood up and spoke. After speaking, his eyes carried a look of confidence. They still had absolute confidence in the Heavenly God Academy. That's right. The third old ancestor has confirmed that the possessor of the human Emperor Fate is Chu Fan, the current ruler of the Great Xia Dynasty. Furthermore, he has an existence who achieved the alternative path to enlightenment by his side and 4 others in the quasi-emperor realm. Right after he finished speaking, another old ancestor of the Heavenly God Academy slowly stood up and spoke. After speaking, he slowly cast his gaze toward the distance. The direction he was looking towards was precisely the eastern region. His gaze at this moment seemed to have pierced through time and space, looking toward the eastern region. Since his strength has reached this level, perhaps we should not allow him to continue growing. Otherwise, he might become the next Xianyuan human emperor in the future. The old ancestor in red robes who had just spoken instantly stood up upon hearing the words of the 2 old ancestors, and he spoke with a solemn look in his eyes. If they were ordinary quasi-emperor realm experts, their Heavenly God Academy might not pay them any mind. But this possessor of the human Emperor Fate now had an existence who achieved the alternative path to enlightenment by his side. Such a powerful existence indeed made their Heavenly God Academy feel tricky to handle. Now, we not only need to deal with Chu Fan, but we must also use Chu Fan to truly deal with the Xianyuan family. This is a rare opportunity. The Xianyuan family cannot possibly miss this possessor of the human Emperor Fate. The elder in white robes then shook his head and spoke to the old ancestor in red robes. After speaking, his eyes carried a look of excitement. In their minds, dealing with Chu Fan, the possessor of the human Emperor Fate, was quite easy. However, their plan was not just limited to eliminating Chu Fan, the possessor of the human Emperor Fate. They also intended to use Chu Fan, the possessor of the human Emperor Fate, to lure out all the experts of the Xianyuan family, and then eliminate the Xianyuan family experts all at once.